of Trustees, June 17th, 2019. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Hogan, will you take roll, please?
Mayor Wilson?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott?
Here.
Trustee Bornstein?
Here.
Trustee Clark?
Here.
Trustee Koopman?
Here.
Trustee Romanella?
Here.
Trustee Stevens is noted absent.
Okay, before us we have an agenda and a consent agenda. Do I have any modifications or a motion to approve?
I move to approve the agenda as there.
Second.
We have a motion and a
As
second.
is. As there.
Trustee Clark?
Yes.
Trustee Bornstein?
Yes.
Mayor Wilson?
Yes.
Trustee Koopman?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott?
Yes.
Trustee Romanella?
Yes.
That motion passes 6-0. First item on the agenda, presentation. El Paso County's Broadband Strategic Plan Study and Fiber Optics Broadband 5G Opportunity. Mr. Eckhart and Zanelnik, please. You're neither one of those.
I know. Commissioner Williams, I just came in support of Mr. Zelenak and Mr. Eckert. They're here to present on our broadband infrastructure plan, and we had the presentation probably 2 months ago. But it gives a good idea of what we want to do to get some more broadband in the county. So I'm just here to introduce them and let them take it over.
Thank you, Holly.
Mr. Eckhart? I apologize, but your PowerPoint is glitching on my computer. I have it up from our board packet, which is a PDF.
Yep.
And you may be able to advance the slide.
Okay.
But if not, I'll just have to manually do it for you.
Sounds good.
Okay.
I'll let you know. So thank you for your time this evening. My name is Jeff Eckhart. I'm the county's Chief Information Officer, which basically means I run the IT department on behalf of the county commissioners. Pleased today to be able to speak to you about broadband. The county just completed a broadband strategic plan. Started with our Senate Bill 152 opt-out, which happened in November of 2016. And Dave can tell you more about what that actually means. And then in 17 and 18, we set out to do a broadband strategic plan for the county. Could I get the next slide, please? There we go. And these are our 4 goals that you see on the screen. We wanted to identify and address the underserved areas of the county. Underserved meaning don't have access to high-speed broadband. The second primary project focus and goal was to drive economic development. Through the course of the study, going into the study, we learned and we were reassured and reconfirmed that access to broadband is a significant economic development driver. You can have 2 houses side by side, same builder, same viewscape, same square footage. One has broadband and one does not. You get a 3% price difference in those 2 homes. So it starts to show you how those with broadband become the haves and those without broadband become the have-nots. And so we wanted to make sure we understood what that economic picture looked like, and that was one of the reasons for us commissioning this study done, or to be done, I'm sorry. Bullet point 3 there, create a strategic roadmap for El Paso County, and then create a cooperative advantage by leveraging the private sector. So, could I get the next slide? There's a slide here on broadband. I hope it's fairly self-explanatory what broadband is. Basically, the bigger the pipe into your home, the more access you have to internet-based, particularly video. So there's a whole breakdown of the broadband sizing equations here. You're more than welcome to have a look at that. But basically, HDTV streaming, 80 megabits per second per TV. So the bandwidth requirements for households are increasing. Your kids, educators are going to want to have your kids take tests offline, do classes online. So the access to broadband is becoming an ever increasingly important issue. Let's go to the next slide, please. So we had 4 findings and 4 recommendations for the Board of County Commissioners. Finding number 1 is that rural El Paso County is largely underserved. If you look at the bottom right of the screen, and I apologize for its size, the areas in pink and red are generally areas that have low access to broadband. So it's points east, it's local communities, and it's mostly rural. We also learned through the course of our study that the state of Colorado has broadband maps on their website that you can go to that are not truly reflective of the conditions on the ground. So we ask residents in the county to take a survey for us and say, hey, what are you seeing at your house for broadband as it compares to what the state says? And if you could see this map a little bit larger, you'd see areas where the state said, oh no, there's great access here, when in fact the residents were reporting quite poor access. So we wanted to get a really good understanding of what the ground conditions were. The study kind of helped emphasize the urban versus rural divide. So of course, the highly urban areas of the city of Colorado Springs, the city of Fountain, Manitou Springs, all have access to generally multiple providers and generally high-speed internet, fiber-based internet to their homes. I'm going to leave that one there and ask them to go to the next slide, please. The next finding was that the anchor institutions were well served. Anchor institutions meaning libraries, schools, police, fire. When we did the actual study, we talked to residents, we talked to businesses, we talked to fire districts, we talked to cities and towns. We wanted to get a complete picture. And what we learned is those larger institutions generally have access to high speed. So there's a lot of federal grant programs that are working because schools and medical institutions are getting access to high-speed broadband at quicker rates, quite frankly, than what individual residents are. Public safety and the county public works often have limited to no connectivity, so as El Paso County plows snow and patches pothole in eastern El Paso County, the networks tend to get weaker and thin out for us. And so we know that our problems as far as the El Paso County picture goes is points east as the population density goes down. Let's go to the next slide. Finding number 3. So throughout this process, we also engaged with our politicians. And we said, you know, what is it that you think government's role should be in helping solve this problem? That residents need access to high-speed broadband, that they don't always get it. So what should government's levers actually be? And overwhelmingly, when they were interviewed individually, they said, we want you to work with the private sector. We want to see public-private partnerships as the foundation of expanding broadband for the residents here. We do not want to be in the broadband business. We do not think government should be in the broadband business. And they were very, very loud and very consistent across the 5 different commissioners. So let me just restate this. Leadership believes private sector should largely drive the solutions. The county should play a facilitator role by creating public or public-private partnership. So public-public partnership would be if the county were to partner with another jurisdiction like CDOT or the city of Manitou Springs or Springs Utilities to come together and pool funds to do a project where we can both benefit, but that it would cost us both quite a bit of money to do independently. You can see this continuum on this slide. There are some communities, the town of Longmont, Colorado, the town itself runs a broadband utility on behalf of its residents. They felt like that was the right direction for their community. Early on, you could get access to gigabit service as a Longmont resident for $50 a month. I don't know about y'all, but I pay a lot more than $50 a month for not gigabit service. So that was a pretty good deal there. So it just depends on, you know, what you want your elected officials to actually do. And I'm here to report tonight that your county commissioners have said, we want you to focus on public-private partnerships, and in no way do we want to see government get involved in the broadband business. Let's go to the next slide, please. Finding number 4 is that there's things that we can do without spending any dollars to help us improve the broadband situation. We can create broadband currency through things like policy, through things like dig once agreements. So if a trench has been opened up, we say, hey, everybody should get access to that trench once, instead of there'd be 3 or 4 companies going down the same main road in the town of Monument, putting in the same fiber side by side. Those kind of things generate opportunities for partnerships down the road. Broadband currency can drive access to improved service, education, healthcare. So HR Green, when they did the study for us, they made policy recommendations that we can then bring back to our board to help facilitate future broadband projects. Next slide, please. So our recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners look like this. Recommendation number 1, create partnerships. We are currently doing a UPass fiber project where the county is really paying cents on the dollar for what it would have cost us to put fiber in the same corridor, as if we had not partnered with CDOT, Springs Utilities, and the city of Manitou Springs. So this is a good opportunity for you to introduce this group to this plan, so that there are future opportunities in the Monument Northern I-25 corridor. You now know where the county stands, what the county's done in other areas, and we can talk to you about opportunities here too. What else do I want to cover here? We are working on improving, or understanding what the conditions would be to improve the broadband in the Cascade Chipeta Park area. There are a couple of incumbent providers there now, and I should be very clear. We engaged with the private sector during this study. We sat down with CenturyLink and with Comcast and with Falcon Broadband and said, hey, you know, we don't want to step on your toes or get in your space, but we want to understand from your position, what is it that county government could be doing to help facilitate broadband. So I just want you to know that the private providers were very engaged in this whole process. Next slide, please. Recommendation number 2 is to create targeted improvement zones. So these are areas where we've heard from some of the other stakeholders or the other constituents that we see the same problem that you see, county. Maybe we should talk about a way to get fiber to the fairgrounds. The county runs the fairgrounds. There's a maintenance yard in Cowhan. There's a DHS facility there. So who are the partners that we could get together and team up to get fiber from Colorado Springs out to the fairgrounds? And you see 3 or 4 other boxes there. I mentioned the Cascade Chipeta Park area. There's certainly one in the Northern Fountain area. And then Black Forest has a traditionally difficult problem to solve, and it's low density houses. Typically, your broadband providers make the most money when they put fiber into high density neighborhoods. Many customers, not a lot of infrastructure, is a good profit scenario. If you live on 2 to 5 to 10 acre tracts, that math goes down dramatically fast. And so that's why many of your rural areas and your low density areas have difficulty getting access to broadband. Anything else I want to cover here? I don't think so. Let's go to the next recommendation, please. We talked about updating our public policy to create broadband currency, cost sharing policies, a fiber master plan, create a cooperative advantage with the private sector, and ideally find programs that can be self-funding. Next, please. And thank you for your help on the slides. Recommendation number 4 is to align projects to mutual needs. So if we know what the county's next 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 projects are, and we socialize those with our partners in the community, then we can start to find out who else is gonna be digging in a certain area and where we can find other economies of scale. Planning and zoning, anchor institutions, other public needs. I'm not sure there's much more to cover here. The good news is Dave Zelenak will be following me, and he'll be able to provide additional information on some of the topics that I've covered for you. And let's go to the last slide, please. Actually, there's two. Recommendation number 5 is, what are you gonna do with it moving forward? So find a change champion within the county and within each of the institutions that wanna be participating, so that we can get policy passed, so that we have somebody in the county who can be the tip of the spear or the conduit for a town of monument trustee interested in talking about broadband. So basically set up some kind of structure here in the county to keep this effort going now that the study is actually complete. I may have one more slide. I think I've covered all of that. Is there any questions I can answer? I covered this topic, this material pretty fast, but I'm happy to do my best to answer any questions you have before Dave comes up and talks about some emerging technologies and other concepts around the same area.
Questions from the board?
I just had a couple of questions, please. In your studies, obviously everybody wants broadband and it's gonna be more central and more populated areas, but is there any data showing relative to what this broadband is? Because is it a high percentage for personal entertainment? Is it for schooling? What is it for? Because there's studies that discuss other views on this, and I'm just curious what you all found out.
Yeah, so my one-word answer is Netflix. Because that's really driving it, right? Video over the internet. You used to get your video from coax in the ground, right? Or you got your video from a satellite dish. Now you're getting it from your internet connection. And there's a lot of heavy bandwidth used there. So ultimately, it's not just Netflix, but it's video and the predominance of video.
So it's entertainment related. Is that what that's basically what you're saying?
So my kids, I have teenage boys, and they're on an online learning platform where their entire schooling through Google Classroom is on the internet.
Right.
And so part of their curriculum is actually watching video of a particular lecture or class or a video that supports a particular topic. So I don't know that I could tell you that it's my belief that it's all entertainment. I think there's a lot of business use video and school. So I just think this is an area that's growing rapidly and it's not gonna stop.
So I have two more questions attached to this. So is El Paso County, have they committed X amount of dollars over a period of time for this, we'll call it a project, strategic plan?
They have not. So we did a strategic plan to say, what are some things that we can be doing that don't require us to spend dollars? So I was talking about finding public-private partnerships, finding other entities who are already digging, finding Comcast, finding CenturyLink to say, hey, what is that? So there was one project where we had a broadband developer come to us and say, hey, we want to go apply for a grant. All we want from the county is for you to sign a letter for us that say you support us getting these grant dollars from the state of Colorado so that we can build out high-speed broadband for a particular neighborhood. So it's not always about spending dollars. It's sometimes there are ways that you can form partnerships and other kind of synergies that don't require that. The county does not have a dedicated budget to develop broadband because quite frankly, they don't want to be in that business.
Then I won't ask my third question.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Sir, so some of the projects we look at right now, for example, we support the district attorney's office. So that includes El Paso and Teller County. So as CDOT has been ripping up 24 up into the mountains, we've asked to go ahead and put a line down at the same time. Now, we did find money in the budget for that. Was 200,000, I think, to go ahead and put a line in because we need to have our district attorney's offices connected. And if we get the chance to send something out to the fairgrounds, then if for whatever reason we're ripping up a road that way, well, we would go ahead and spend the money. As far as actually dedicating anything else to it, I can tell you I don't think that's gonna happen, cause we need a jail. And we need people to staff the jail. You'll see how nice our roads are. So, we have so many other competing interests, you know, I see it's more, for example, if we're tearing up Monument Hill Road up here, which we are, then is there a point in time where we wanna talk about putting down some pipe? Cause it's a matter of just getting the pipe down, and then, you know, go from there. So I think it's more of driven by as road construction projects come up, and the road's torn up anyway, we should get the utilities in for it. Is that fair? Okay.
Thank you.
And I just had one thing I wanted to add to their experience. I had the unfortunate experience of having to go to DeVita Emergency Clinic and had a serious ear infection. And I had to wait over an hour and a half for the medical physician to be able to access stuff online to be able to determine what to do for me. And complaining the whole time that their access to the internet was horrific. So I think it would also benefit the medical field.
Is there other questions from the board? In your presentation, so clarify for me in layman's terms. Broadband, you interchange broadband and fiber. Are we talking about the same thing?
Essentially, yes.
Broadband is fiber.
So fiber is used to bring broadband to your home. So
Okay.
the fiber is the actual
Conduit.
equipment.
So
The
when-
service you get is broadband from that.
Okay. So you were talking about survey accuracy. Based on what people know of it, do you find that your survey is accurate?
So we relied on people to self-report what their speeds were, and they could send us a screenshot. So we basically gave them a speed test and said, hey, if you'll do this for us, then we'll be able to validate whatever the state of Colorado is saying as far as what the speeds are for that particular area. But we basically relied on the resident to honestly report their result.
Okay, so when you get a speed test, and I haven't done one for a while, does that tell you whether it's broadband or any other type of service?
So you can certainly tell from your speeds. Broadband right now by the FCC is considered 10 megabit per second upload and 1 down. So if your speeds exceed that, then you're considered by the FCC to have broadband. Most people in the industry call that a pretty weak standard, and it should be more like 25/3, 25 up, 3 down. I'm sorry, 25 down, 3 up. So those are probably the numbers that the rest of the world is attuned to. In general, the rest of the world has higher speed internet than what the US does. Southeast Asia, places that again are very high density population centers.
Mhm. So, one more question. With the maps, these maps don't show it very well. How does Monument look as far as under service?
So Monument actually looks pretty good. You have multiple providers here, and you have fairly high densities. So the private sector has recognized that and has come in and for the most part provided service. I didn't zoom in on your particular area before I came. I do want to tell everyone that the entire study, 250 pages or so, is on the county's website,
Okay.
which would let you zoom in more tightly to those maps.
Okay.
Be able to get down to more of a neighborhood scale level to see how your house ranks. Is the GIS tool online too? Yeah, so there's an online interactive tool also. We can click on individual points and see what we're reporting from those points.
Any other questions from the board? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Eckert.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the Board of Trustees. David Zelenak with H.R. Green, a consulting engineering firm. I'd like to say hello again. It's been a few months or so since I think I was here last for you. And also, just to start off, I'd like to really congratulate you on your appointment of your town manager and to brag him up a little bit that I think there's 300 cities and towns incorporated in the state of Colorado. I've talked now to Mr. Foreman a number of times on broadband. I would tell you that of the 300 city managers across the state, you've got probably one who's in the top 1% who gets this, understands the value of it, and really speaks the lingo and knows the lexicon and knows the terminology and the benefits and values. So really a huge compliments to your extraordinary selection and the credentials he brings with him. So thank you for that. What I'd like to do maybe is just to talk for a few more minutes and walk through some of the points that Mr. Eckhart and Commissioner Williams made to talk about, again, some of the value of these things. One slide I thought I'd share with you is what other cities are doing and why. At last count, I think there's 114 cities and counties and special districts across Colorado that have done the SB 152 exemption. And I won't belabor the point there, but as Jeff said, about 10 years ago, the state legislature passed a law that took the ability for cities and counties to control their destiny with respect to broadband. The state legislature took that away, and they said that if you want it back, you've got to do a vote that will allow you to reinstate the control you had in 2005. And so with that, I'll tell you that Longmont did the first one of those in 2009. At that time, I was a city official with the city of Centennial. We did the second, Centennial, Colorado, just up the road, did the second one of those. That was 2013. And since 2013, there have been over 100 cities that followed our lead in Centennial and bringing these things forward. So there's a short list there. As Jeff said, I think the only other city in El Paso County that's not done this yet, I think Rama has not done this yet, but Fountain has, Woodland Park, Teller County, El Paso County, City of Colorado Springs. Just in the last 2 or 3 years, they've all done this. You folks, I think, in Rama, maybe, I'm not sure about Palmer Lake, but I think for sure you and Rama are the two outliers that have not yet done an SB 152 exemption election. There has not been, by the way, since the 2009, the first one that went through did fail. That was Longmont's, but since then that every single one has passed. Blackhawk had only one person vote no in the one that they did up there. What I'd like to point out is Centennial. We'll talk a little bit more about Centennial. Centennial was where I did much of the work before I joined H.R. Green 4 years ago. They now have a city partnership organization called Centennial Fiber Works, where, as Jeff said, the county commissioners have decided that they want no part of a county employee broadband service, but Centennial says, let's work with a partnership. And sure enough, a company called Ting, they're a competitor to Google Fiber. Ting is now providing gigabit, which, as Jeff said, 25 and 3 is the internet standard for broadband. If you don't have 25 and 3, you don't have broadband. In Centennial, in Longmont, the minimum there is 1,000. And as Jeff said, $50 a month will get you in Longmont 1,000 megabits a second. Here in Monument, you may have 20 or 30. And I'm paying, and I live in Colorado Springs, I'm paying $180 a month for my service. And I get reliably 60, 70, 80. But you can get basically 1,000 megabits a second, so you get 20 or 30 times the speed for roughly less than half the price, which is kind of why a lot of cities are saying, hey, if the private sector won't step forward and do that, then the cities will play a stronger role. But you can't even do that unless you've got this exemption thing on the books that you can do that. Another example, we'll just talk briefly about DMEA, the Delta Montrose Electric Association, is working closely with Montrose and Delta. That's the D and the M in DMEA. And they're working through a partnership up there to do it. I know that Mr. Foreman was involved in the Northwest COG for quite a while. And they've got probably, they are the poster child across the state right now in terms of ways to do it right, partnering with everybody, as Jeff said, that can be partnered with. The county's doing one with Youth Pass. Steamboat Springs, of course, the next city over is Craig, where he came from, and Next Light is the Longmont city one, where you're paying $50 a month for city employee gigabit speed service. Real quickly, what really matters in broadband, arguably, is the speed, and I would give you all a homework assignment. Tonight when you're done here, go on speedtest.net. You just hit click and see what you get in your home. Again, 25 and 3 is the standard for broadband. I'll bet half of you do, and I'll bet you half of you don't get broadband. Arguably, though, what I would say is the most important thing, what really matters in broadband is not the speed necessarily, it's what they call the latency. And that's really where the big fiber optic fight breaks out between the private sector and how fast is fast enough. Latency really means when you click your mouse, how long does it take for your computer system to go to wherever the server is back in Ohio and then get back to you your answer. That click time basically is latency. That's how fast it responds. Capacity, as Jeff said, one of his slides, there's about a dozen people per house now on, so can the whole family be on at once? What's the quality of your connection? Actually, you've got pretty high quality service connections here with Comcast and CenturyLink. Cost per bit, what are you paying? Like Longmont will give you 1,000 for $50. You're paying here maybe $150 and getting 20 or 30 or 40 in Monument, I would guess. And I put speed as the last of the 5 main important things there, because speed really only applies as Ms. Clark said, that when you want to download a big file from a distance, that's where the speed, it can take an hour to download a big file, where you don't care about the latency, you don't care about the click time, but you care about how long does it take to download a big file. And that's a great example for why speed's important, or maybe not. Most people don't download big files a lot. Everybody doesn't need them all, and different technologies will be out there for some time, and they have different benefits and different costs. How broadband is delivered, there's really wireless systems and wireline systems. You can get broadband through satellite, you can get through your cell phone. I give that 2 stars. I'd give 5G coming soon to a telephone near you. I give that 3 stars. And on the right there, by the way, is a picture of what some people lovingly call a Frankenpole. And I think you folks have done a 5G or small cell aesthetic ordinance or something. I'm not quite sure. I've not looked into that, but I think you've done or will soon have something take effect there. So congratulations to you and the foresight to put that on your agenda. That's a big deal, so you can outlaw the Frankenpoles. On the wireline service, you can have aerial, underground there. DSL is a 100-year-old technology. Actually, Alexander Graham Bell had copper wires, and they're still using copper wires today. That's been around for 100 years. Coax cable since the 60s, really. And the 5-star, in Dave's own personal ranking there, is the fiber optic cable. It's often referred to as future-proofed. Reality is it'll be around for about 100 years from most people's perspective. So that's how broadband gets delivered. All of them, by the way, use fiber to some extent. There may be a fiber to the node or backbone, and we'll talk about those just briefly. 5G, again, 5G refers not to a wireline service. 5G is the wireless service. 5G doesn't exist in the US today. You can go to China, you can go to Korea. Some countries have it. The US does not yet have 5G. They've not yet settled on the standards, and FCC has not even proclaimed what band, what channels 5G will use in this country. So we're at least a couple of years away. What I find interesting with the 5G, though, is that the 4G cellular phones, all that we all have right now, there's probably a cell phone tower within 2 or 3 miles of us that's talking to your cell phone. When we go to 5G, due to the frequencies involved in the laws of physics, that drops from 3 miles distance between the cell phone and the tower to about 300 feet. And that huge difference, you get a huge increase in performance, but that drives a huge decrease in distance between there. So I won't go into belabor some of those things. The bottom line is that this is a graphic we did for the city of Thornton. They're one of our clients, and we did a study for them. And this is kind of hard to see, so I apologize, but every colored dot in this neighborhood, we deliberately picked this one neighborhood because it's a shopping center, there's some apartments, there's some warehouse spaces, and there's just some single-family houses with cul-de-sacs. But at the 300-foot spacing, and by the way, that's 300-foot spacing per carrier. This is a mock layout of one neighborhood, looking at the density of these Frankenpoles. You need one practically. One way that we like to explain it is that, in fact, one source out there is talking about having a densification, is the word they use, or density of 5G towers at 480 5G towers per square mile of typical, in the case of Monument, I don't know how many square miles you have here. If you had 2 square miles, you probably need 1,000 of these towers around town at that rate. And of course, to hook them up, Mr. Tharnish and Larry be chasing around about 1,000 street cuts per square mile to put in the fiber optics that will be required for those 5G transmitters. A good rule of thumb is roughly twice as many cell towers as there are street lights in the typical community. So for every 1 street light, predict to have 2 additional cell phone towers for every 1 street light. It's just a good rule of thumb. Here's a picture that was developed of, by, and for the city of Centennial. That's Arapahoe Road. looking to the west at Mount Evans, and that's kind of the Centennial's main street. IKEA is just off in the distance there. This is a picture today, and then is it better one? Is it better two, as they say? That's a simulation that the city staff did up there, looking at the densification of these 5G towers. So this is not done by us. This is done by Centennial staff to illustrate what the future may look like with these 5G towers coming your way. Again, every one of these towers has to have fiber optics, and that's why fiber is so important. Fiber to the home, again, can be aerial, underground, as Jeff said. The homes, a good rule of thumb is that the studies have shown that you get about a 3% increase in home value for a house that does have fiber optic cable versus a house that does not have fiber optic cable. So if you have say, $300,000 house, 3% of that roughly is $10,000, and so you get roughly a $10,000 bump in the value of your house in exchange for what could be, it varies, somewhere between $600 and maybe $3,000 of investment into fiber optic cable will get you a $10,000 bump out. In fact, it's gotten so crazy. This is a picture I took of a yard sign in San Antonio where some neighborhoods there are now been fiberized, or they have fiber hoods. And next to the house for sale sign, the most important thing that they put up in their yard is not just house for sale. House for sale, this house has fiber optic connection to it. Come buy this one because it's more valuable because there's a fiber optic cable. So this is kind of what you're seeing around different parts of the country as people see, yeah, put $1,000, $2,000, get a $10,000 bump in value, and that really helps stimulate house sales. Here's a concept that's kind of emerging here. On the right there's a picture that I took on Monument Hill. That's maybe 2 or 3 months ago. That's a spool of, was it 5 different spools of not fiber optic cables, but just plastic pipe. It's just conduit going in the ground there. And this is part of the GAP project that I know Commissioner Williams and a lot of the commissioners have been working hard to push through the 18-mile GAP project. There's tons and tons of fiber going through there. There's a lot of fiber optic cable going in the ground now. I'd suggest that if you haven't had someone yet talk to CDOT, there may be an opportunity to just do a lateral off of all that construction, bring it into the town, at least lay something, as Commissioner Williams said, lay something in the ground. It's just plastic pipe. It's about $2 a foot if there's an open trench there, so it's not hugely expensive. But what we're finding interesting is that because the real value in this telecommunications business is not as much in the fiber optic cable, which is how you deliver it, it's really in the underground pipe. The money's in the pipe, not the cable. The cable itself is about a penny per foot strand, or penny per strand foot, 1 cent per strand per foot to buy the cable. So a 96 strand cable is 96 cents a foot. The pipe itself, if there's an open trench, is about $1 a foot. So $1 a foot to put the fiber optic cable in, about $1 a foot to buy the 2-inch plastic pipe and drop it into an open trench. If you don't have an open trench, and one of our clients is Laguna Beach, to put a linear foot of pipe in Laguna Beach right now is $66 a foot. So you pay $66 to put it in, and you pay $1 to buy the pipe. The pipe cost is $1, $66 a foot to put it in right now in Laguna Beach. Here we're seeing prices $20 to $30 for the $1 per foot price for the conduit. So really, what we're seeing though is that when there are open trenches around, there are a lot of providers, there are entrepreneurs and speculators. It's like the Wild West, saying, "Hey, I will lay in a privately owned. I'm Larry, the conduit entrepreneur, and you got an open trench there. Let me drop in 10 more 2-inch pipes for $20 a foot, and I'll flip it and I'll sell it and I'll make a boatload of money because again, the value's in the pipe, not the fiber as much." And we're seeing what we're calling speculative conduit installers. These are enterprising people that know the value of the pipe and that the demand will be there. Real quickly, this is a picture of Centennial. It's in blue there. On the west is Littleton, 15 miles to the east is Aurora, and we started off doing a fiberized project in Centennial. Every green dot or red dot is a traffic signal across Centennial. IKEA, by the way, is kind of right there in the middle. Arapahoe Road's the red line there. And then just to give you a little perspective, IKEA is kind of right in the middle because everybody knows where IKEA is. It's 15 miles across. There are 84 traffic signals. What we did was we went to the council and had them, as Jeff said, do a public policy change. So every time an inch of somebody's putting fiber in Centennial, they require a second conduit to go in at the city's expense. So the first guy may pay $30 a foot for it. City says, we'll piggyback on you, we'll give you $2. It costs you $30, and that's what Jeff said earlier. is the cents or pennies per dollar is what Centennial did. So again, this is a better one, is a better two. This is the better one. This is life before we had the council do the public policy, and 4 years later, the map of Centennial now looks like that. So Centennial went, and they're about, I guess, 10 times your population, so adjust these downward. They've got 60 miles of pipe now all over Centennial. They put 600,000 city dollars, so scale that back to a tenth, because you're about a tenth their size. So in your magnitude, that's $60,000 in monument dollars. Sounds like dog years, but monument dollars. So they put 600K in. 4 years later, they have 60 miles of pipe across Centennial. The value of the pipe is probably worth approaching $20 million. So they put 600K in, and they have a system now valued at $20 million. But that's not the best part. The best part really is that now that they've got all that fiber in the ground, the company that I mentioned earlier, 90% of the cost really is in the pipe, not the fiber. But now that they've got that, this is a picture I took of a billboard right there by, and the ladies always know where the Shane Company is. You know, it's 1/2 mile east of I-25 on Arapahoe Road. Shane Company is right below this billboard. And that's Ting says, well, now that Centennial has all this pipe in the ground, Ting Inc., the Ting Corporation, will give you they call it crazy fast fiber internet to Centennial. And they're seeing, in fact, a predictable rise in value in the neighborhoods that are being fiberized. So this fiber optic thing is going crazy. Talking about what you all can do, just as a wrap up here in the home stretch, I like to use a quote by Albert Einstein. I wish I had a good German accent. If I had an hour to solve the problem, I would spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem, and I'd spend 5 minutes thinking about solutions. The point there is a bad German, I told you it's a bad German accent, but the point there really is that the hard part is trying to think about defining the problem, not defining the solution. And what I would suggest, what Jeff brought up and Commissioner Williams brought up, is really much of the work the county did was trying to understand the nature of the problem. That was the dots map that he had up there. What we like to say is that the vision is the most important part. We spend a lot of time with communities like yours, helping them understand what role is right for monument. What's right in monument is not right in Longmont. People say, oh, you should do planning also. You do look at a feasibility study. We try to talk people, yeah, we can make money doing that, but the reality is that there are hundreds of feasibility studies that have been done. They're on the books. They go nowhere because they never got the vision right. What is the right role, as Jeff said, what's the right role for monument? And so we try to talk people out of doing a planning or feasibility study. You saw this graphic on Jeff's chart there. Where is monument in the spectrum? Is it do nothing, which is kind of where you are now? You can do everything, or there's an array, there's a spectrum of P3s or partnerships between doing nothing and doing everything. We advise the towns that we work for to look at this array of options and figure out what's right for you. I'll just zip through here. Ownership models, we won't spend a lot of time on any of these, but there's public sector, there's the partnerships, and there's private sector. Right now you've got a fully privatized model where your policy in essence is to do nothing. One example here for a public policy only model, and this is kind of where you are right now, is we like to talk about the fairy broadband mother. You do nothing and you hope the fairy broadband mother will come in someday and she'll be kind enough to bring fiber speed and increase your home values and stimulate economic development and bring jobs into town through improved telecommunications. The reality is, as Jeff said, you have, relative to the rest of the county, the service here is actually probably pretty good. Relative to the rest of the world, it's probably pretty bad. It depends on your perspective. For El Paso County, you're probably a little better off than the average, but I think you've got a long ways to go. So this is where you are today. Steamboat Springs decided, as Jeff said, that one thing the county is doing, Steamboat actually is taking this on, and they are building fiber to every, Jeff called them anchor institutions. So if you have a library, you have a school, you have a firehouse, you have a YMCA, that all the public buildings have a city-owned piece of fiber optic cable to where you're really just helping the public institutions be better schools, better hospitals, better healthcare, to what they call anchor institutions. That's Steamboat's model there, and that's a partnership. Centennial's model I talked about briefly already. Centennial has city-owned pipe and they make the infrastructure available to now 4 companies. Ting is one of 4, and they're killing it up there right now. They are going gangbusters, and we're seeing a lot of good work. But it's Ting plus 3 now because 3 other competitors come in there. And then Longmont, as Jeff also said, has Nextlight, which is a city government-owned model, where, as Jeff said, $50, you get 1,000 megabits or a gigabit per second for $50. The amazing part about that is that in Longmont, the one number that's hard to see there is they have roughly 20,000 residential customers, each of them paying $50 a month, and the net monthly revenue generation is just under $1 million a month. 20,000 times $50. They're making $1 million a month. From what we understand, they will defease the 20-year bonds in less than 7 years, probably 5 years, pay off the 20-year bonds in 5 years, and then pocket $1 million a month in the city treasury. Actually, it's the enterprise fund treasury in Longmont's case. But this has been so successful in Longmont that Loveland now just issued, I think, a $60 or $70 million bond. Fort Collins a few months ago did a $150 million bond. Greeley is probably 6 months behind them, but all the cities, and even little Estes Park is in on this now. So you find clusters of cities where one city does it and then everybody else says, gosh, we don't want to be left in the dust. So now it's Greeley, Fort Collins, Loveland, Longmont, and Estes Park are all moving forward with what works well up there and what they want to do. So they're doing a city-owned internet function. So just wrapping up here, this is my last slide, sorry. But as Jeff said, probably the number one thing you can do is to take on some advocacy role of this. Find a champion. Champions are often found in chambers of commerce with elected officials. I know that the county commissioners have a number of very passionate elected officials and people in the community. As Jeff also mentioned, the SB 152 election is critical. If you want to partner, you can't even partner with the private sector without taking this SB 152 election to the ballot box. That's got to happen. Explore the fiber opportunities. As I said, the gap is now open right now. It's kind of, some would say it'd be irresponsible not to at least explore what possibilities are there. There's a trench open, as Commissioner Williams said, you got an open trench. It's $1 a foot. It'd be crazy not to take advantage of the opportunity, throw a little bit of money at it and bring in a fiber optic cable right into this building and then figure out what you're gonna do with it then. But when there's an open trench, don't ever pass the opportunity. A lot of cities are saying, if you pave a street, that's a great time. You cut a trench in the street before you pave over it. Put the fiber optic cable in under the street. In fact, we did a project up in it's Beaver Creek, it's the Bachelor Gulch Metro District. And they says, hey Dave, give us a plan. We're gonna pave a third of the streets. Now it's last summer. Give us a plan so we can put fiber optic cable into every house in Beaver Creek before you pave the street. And so some cities are doing methodologies where you do that. When there's an opportunity, you put it in. Triview, I know, has a great reputation for doing a lot of excellent work there. New developments, when they're building a new housing development, you got a new cul-de-sac going in, I would suggest work with your staff and encourage them to change your requirements to require not fiber optic cable, but just put the pipe in now. Put the fiber optic conduit pipe in, $2 a foot, and you've got the potential to add in $1 a foot fiber optic in the future to every house for a very, very low price. Create a vision. You don't need a feasibility study, in my opinion, right now. You don't want to jump into this head first, but do spend a little time figuring out what's right for a monument. And if you want to advance anything, I don't know what your budget cycle looks like, but I guess it always comes down to some money. I'd suggest think about both the SB 152 election, and I'd suggest that you look at a 2020 budget item to do something with this, maybe even sometime right now in 2019, since you have the gap open. Talk to them first, see what CDOT's doing. And then see what it would take. You're probably talking, it's more than hundreds of dollars, you're probably talking thousands of dollars to bring a fiber optic cable into this building with the open trenches and with the opportunity there. So that's my spiel. I don't know if it's more than you wanted, less than you wanted, if I'm probably on borrowed time.
Is there any questions for Mr. Nazzo?
I have 3 simple questions.
Sure.
Example by Longmont, with them partnering and having that system, would that mandate to the residents that you're using us and nobody else, or do they still have a choice?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, Longmont, interestingly enough, I had lunch not too long ago with the Longmont broadband director. He told me that one of the neighborhoods, there's a term they use called take rate. Take rate means how many people in a neighborhood will take the service. The minimum take rate they've seen is 40%. The average has been about 60. One neighborhood hit 94%. It's slowly, Comcast, I'll be honest, is not a big fan of this. But one neighborhood went to 94%, turned in their Comcast clickers and took the city equipment and the city service at $50 versus $150. So we're seeing $1,000 annual reduction is not out of the ordinary. $1,000 grandma saves $1,000 a year. She gets 30 times the speed, and that's why you see 94% take rates. The average, though, runs about 40 to 60%. Typically what we see when we do studies is that you need about 34% overall take rate to make this thing financially feasible for Monument, given your circumstances here. So if 34% of the households took a Town of Monument fiber optic service, that's about minimal break even, 34%. But Longmont's killing it up there at 94 in some neighborhoods.
So what has the response been from the big players, the two big players
Oh,
that are out there?
they are almost violently, I won't use the word violently, they really don't like this at all. The keep in mind take rate, when you have a 94% take rate for the city of Longmont service, that means a 6% retention rate for Comcast. And so when you lose 94% of your customer base, there's a significant part of revenue. And when you look at not just Longmont, but like I said, Loveland, Longmont, Fort Collins, there's close to 1 million people that in the next 2 years in northern Colorado will have municipal broadband with these paying off the debt in 5 to 7 years, returning extra funds to the general fund, and saving their people money. And by the way, Digital Globe moved 4,000 jobs in, you may have seen that, to Longmont. Oddly enough, not because they have Longmont fiber service, but because the pipes are there, the service is there, and they're actually using Comcast cable for 4,000 high-tech jobs moved into Longmont because of the fiber optic connectability.
Have you seen cities working with developers or doing housing projects where the city might mandate to the developers that you will put this in as part of doing business with good intent of the town, where maybe then the town doesn't absorb? And it's a low cost from what you're saying.
Oh, yeah.
But it's something, it's like, hey, if they're bringing homes in, have them do it. It's part of being a good neighbor.
Absolutely. In fact, not last Sunday's Denver Post, but HR Green, they didn't quote us corporately, but a project, the front page of this is 2 Sundays ago's Denver Post, talked about, we are the developer of record, engineer of record, for a project called Aurora Highlands. And if you know where the new Gaylord Hotel is, everything from the Gaylord Hotel south to I-70, that's Aurora Highlands. It's a smart community development. We're working with that developer there. We're City of Aurora. They've created a metro district. The metro district will own a lot of the infrastructure, and we're doing the design for them right now. But they want to build from the ground up, as you all could hear. You put the infrastructure in from the ground up, and they're going to have smart streetlights, so the streetlights can dim at 3 o'clock in the morning. The streetlights become transmitters for 5G, because why have a streetlight and 2 transmitters? You just have 1 pole to serve all these things. And so they're seeing these huge benefits. This hasn't been announced publicly yet, but there's a publicly soon to be announced partnership opportunity where the city, the developer, and under our leadership, really, we figured out what you'll be reading about soon is a very intriguing opportunity going into raw land, new developments for exactly that purpose. But there's some exciting times going on if you do it when the trench is open.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any additional questions?
I just have some comments to the board, if I may.
Okay.
Prior to my running for election, I was very interested in this concept and talked to the major developers in the area, commercial and residential, and they have already agreed that they will put in the broadband conduit at their own cost. So that's number one. And the second thing I would like to say is that I think it's really important that Monument retain or get back the local control that they gave up with that bill passing. So I would like to recommend, no matter what the reaction might be, that we at the very least, have the staff prepare the SB 152 exemption, giving us back our local control by asking that question on the next ballot in the general election coming out in November. Just asking if the voters would give us the right to retain that local control. And I have, Longmont also had a ballot question already legally cleared, etc. And if it's legally permissible to imitate it, that could save a great deal as well. But local developers, both commercial and residential, are definitely very much interested in doing this. I've also talked to a lot of the water districts, and they too are willing to put in at their cost. So the Town of Monument's initial foray into this could be just getting the SB 152 exemption on the ballot and, you know, a line item in the budget in the future for 2020, saying that we could at least take a look at what the benefits could be to Monument to entertain this idea. So those are just my comments, and I'm mostly really concerned about that, the town's right to provide all services were restricted since 2005. I'm really interested in making sure that Monument has local control back, for a lot of different, various reasons, all which are to Monument's benefit.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, just to clarify, when we talk about the broadband and the fiber optics and what have you, the way that our town is very creatively broken apart with metro districts, so this would be really relative to the west side. This would not be an impact on the Jackson Creek area unless our friends over there chose to participate or do something of that nature.
And
Is
they
that
did.
correct?
And they did. They did agree to participate and put in the conduit at their cost.
See, I don't understand if developers and districts are ready to do this, why aren't they doing it?
They are. They
Oh,
are going to be
okay.
doing it. And that's for commercial developments as well.
Okay.
The great thing about that is that once the developers put it in the ground, then Monument on the west side and the older side can piggyback on those connections and making it even cheaper for us to do it.
Can we ask maybe Mr. Foreman to reach out to Triview and pulse them on what, if anything, they're doing, and maybe kind of see if there's a joint interest or something we can do together?
Definitely can.
And again, that's certainly.
Me and
I'm not sure
me and
what
Jim
we
are now
asked them
meeting.
to-
What I'd like, I mean, I'd be curious to see what, if anything, they're doing. So I mean, if you want to just reach out to Mr. O'Grady over there and see what they're doing, if anything, if they had this discussion, are they talking about it?
Definitely can do that if that's the wish of the board.
Yeah, I think it would be interesting to see what they're doing because they maintain ownership for the development, the business park that will be in Old Denver, and I would have to make an assumption that they're gonna be doing this relative to businesses. I'm a little bit red flag that we didn't, everything today was about really residential, and then we had some hospitals,
Well,
various like that, but it's
Commercial.
somewhat disappointing that people are focusing so much on their Netflix, but that's another topic for another day.
well, but you
Well,
would think
it's just-
commercially it wouldn't be, like, they would take care of it.
It would
Yeah.
ought to be
I mean,
addressed, is
yeah.
what you're saying, correct?
If,
Yeah.
personally, if I'm
Yeah,
gonna
but it's
build a
just-
building down here, I'll probably put in what I think is.
And this would be very attractive for businesses,
So I wouldn't see what the town would have to do with it.
especially
That-
medical
That's why I'm a little
businesses.
bit, yeah, so, I think it's worth looking into, so.
I'm for Mike asking Triview what they're doing, if they're doing anything just out of interest.
I'll get you,
Is
I'll
everybody in
get your
agreement?
report this week.
Would it have to be a general election?
Probably next week, because I'm gonna be out of town.
Would it have to be the general election in November, or could you put it on in April if we wanted to do
Well,
this?
I think there's some kind of timeline where if you get it in November, it's the most beneficial route, I was told. So that's why I suggested the November ballot, then the general election.
And putting on that question wouldn't necessarily
Yeah.
change anything
No,
about our
just give us our
current-
rights back.
It would give us our rights back, so I mean, I'd say at the very least, that's something we need to be talking about.
Right.
So is
I
it
would
okay?
rather
I'd
go
like-
with that than
Right. I'd
worry
like,
about what Triview's doing right now.
I'd like to know why we couldn't do it in April, or what the,
We could do it earlier.
But I do think it would be very good for developments that are, we know that are now happening on the west side. I think this is something that the board can impose. It's not like, would you think about, might you like to? No, you will.
Well,
We can do that, but they have already agreed. They're already going to do it.
And maybe, Mike, you can
Mr.
just
Zanella?
validate that
I'll
for us.
verify that.
That's
can
all.
you answer, with SB, what is it, 151?
152.
152, does that play any role into new developments putting down broadband as they see fit?
It can, yes. In fact, it depends. If the developers retain control of the ownership of the pipe, then it's developer pipe. If the city says, no, we want a shared pipe, or we want a city pipe of our own, without SB 152 exemption, you cannot partner, you can't rent it, lease it, touch it, do anything with the private sector. So if grandma wants, or if you have a business that's right adjacent to the pipe there, and the business says, look, for $800, I can get Larry's fiber optic company to bring me a fiber optic cable in for $800 in the city pipe, that's illegal. But if Comcast
Right.
wants to come in, typically it's 20 to 30,000 for a small business to bring a fiber optic cable in. It varies based on what the market will bear,
But back to my question, if a new development's going in, and they can put down broadband as they see fit, as they're building the road in their development, they can put it down as they see fit?
I wish I could give you a simple answer to your very excellent question. The reality is that depends on the ownership of the pipe, where the pipe is, and what the nature of that is. One of the deals that we're working now with the developer in the Denver area is to make sure that the city, in that case, always has the ability to partner with the private sector for the use of the pipe the developer's putting in.
I understand that point.
But Aurora, in this case, City of Aurora, has passed their SB 152 exemption, so they can do that. Without that, they could not do that. It's either privately owned or it's publicly owned, but you can't really use it for much other than getting the firehouse connected through the city-owned pipe. The SB 152 is really critical to use it for the intended purposes.
Thank you.
So one question, if you were to put that on a ballot and it's voted and the public goes yes, is there a flat time before it goes into effect?
No,
How does that work?
it's instant. It's
Okay.
instantaneous. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So if anything, it allows future opportunity should we choose to pursue that.
Exactly, and that's right. That's why every city but Rama, I think now, has done that in El Paso
So
County.
even
Just-
if we have no plans, it preserves our future opportunity rights.
Yes.
Exactly, yeah, what we see a lot is the question then that we hear a lot is, should you do the visioning study before or visioning study after the SB 152 election? And the answer is both, because on the one hand, if you do it before, Fountain chose to do theirs before their election, so they could tell their electorate in Fountain, hey, here's the advantages, here's what we're seeing, this is what's right for Fountain, yes or no. Other cities say no, let's put it on the ballot first, that's no cost to do that, and then we'll study it if they approve it. There's no right or wrong way, you can look at it first or look at it after. What's important though is that you do the exemption, get your rights back.
So at this time, though, we could not to impose to any developer that either you put your own pipe in, or we're gonna put pipe in, or we can't do anything.
Well, no, so actually, quite the contrary. What I would advise you to do is to work through your staff. My advice would be to change your, and I don't know if you have ordinances, usually it works best as an ordinance, not a resolution. It could be a city manager imposed policy. I've seen it all different ways. Sometimes public works will just autograph an interim regulation. By whatever mechanism you do that, though, you can do that this afternoon. You can require a developer to place pipe in the ground as part of your development process. I don't know that for a fact, but I'm sure 99% chance you can require the pipe to go in today. What you do with it is up to you. In fact, with the Centennial example I had up there, that was a 4-year period where we were laying in, it's called co-locating. We're co-locating 60 miles of pipe. That took 4 years, and we didn't know what we were gonna do with it. Then along comes Ting and says, oh, we know what to do with that. We're gonna light you guys up with fiber that it was pre-exemption. So Centennial's exemption didn't happen to 2013. The pipe map I showed you started in 2010. So it was going in 3 years before the exemption, and then the exemption, then 3 years later comes Ting. So these are long-term
Thank you so
processes.
much.
Thank you.
So is it
Mr.
okay to-
Foreman, are you comfortable with your direction?
I am, sir.
Will you give me feedback on what you believe is that?
Okay,
Because
so, what I think you're telling me to do is let's look at whether or not we're gonna pass SB 152 in November or April. There will be a cost of doing it, probably a little bit more doing it in November than April, because we're already gonna have an April election. So we'd have to join the county's election, right? If we did it in November, and we'd have to pay to be in that. So it'd be extra cost to do it in November for the town than it would be in April. So I'd advise you to wait till April, because we're gonna have to do a lot of study about what this is gonna be. I believe, 2 towns I've been in, or 1 town here in Colorado, we did pass SB 152 in Craig. It was a pretty simple thing to do, but we did it during a normal election.
Okay.
And so, and then I've already sent Jim a text just now saying, what are you doing about this in developments that you're creating today?
Okay, is the board good with that? Perfect.
And I think my last question, you're gonna find out or validate on the developments that are moving forward. Are they planning on it? And if they're not,
I
something?
just asked that question to Jim just now.
Okay.
And
Well,
then-
no, I'm not talking about with Jim. I'm talking about our stuff going on,
Okay,
our
but-
developments. I'm not interested in that.
And that's one thing that I was gonna ask you, have you seen, this put into development agreements with existing, developments that are going in, say like Willow Springs? Cause I've done that before in another state, we put it in development agreements where they had to put in the 2-inch conduit for us to be able to install fiber optics.
So I've not,
Can we research this another time?
Yep, I was just asking.
yeah, I've not seen it put into an agreement after the agreement's been struck, but I have seen it done where you can cut a deal with the installer. So you go out when when the trench is open and you cut the deal there with the installer.
Right.
The developer doesn't really care, but changing the agreement, that gets tricky legally.
No, I mean, before you sign that agreement.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, before you sign the agreement, absolutely.
Thank you. Resolution number 18-2019, a resolution requesting an extension of time to report and file the 2018 Town of Monument Audit Report. Mr. Winger.
Good evening. Basically, we just finished up field work with our audit last week, and it's continued into this week a little bit. But under Colorado Revised Statutes, we should be presenting that to you this month and then giving it to the state next month. So we are not gonna make that deadline because the field work doesn't get started till June. So what we're asking for is an extension for presentation to the board here into July, and then we'll file it with the state in August. I've put in a 60-day window in case, just in case, so I don't have to come back and ask again for the state, but I foresee that at the July 15th meeting, that we'll have the auditor present the report to you, and then we'll file with the state shortly thereafter with any changes that might be made.
Okay. Questions?
Yes, what happened to make it so delayed again? I'm sorry, I missed that part.
I guess it got rescheduled several times over the last few months with
So
the
the-
transitions we've had.
So the auditor can't make it? Or-
So I think the town requested that the audit, because I think originally it was scheduled to be done in March. That did not happen. I think the town requested to have that moved. And then June was basically the first time that they could get back in after it had been requested to move it again.
And do you-
So, I guess from their standpoint, they were requested to move it further back into the year.
So the auditor requested or the town
The
requested?
town requested.
The town requested. Are you running into some problems?
I wouldn't say we're running into problems, obviously, it's just a matter of timing,
Okay.
of getting it done in the timeframe needed.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Okay. Do we have a motion?
Motion to pass resolution 18-2019, resolution requesting an extension of time to report and file the 2018 Town of Monument Audit Report.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Hogan.
Trustee Koopman,
Yes.
Trustee Bernstein,
Yes.
Trustee Clark,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott,
Yes.
Mayor Wilson,
Yes.
Trustee Romanella.
Yes.
Motion passes, the resolution passes 6-0. Resolution number 19-2019, a resolution repealing resolution number 31-2002. Mr. Winter.
Okay, so you had a resolution passed in 2002 that defined how you dispose of town property. At that time, you set limits of $1,000 of original acquisition cost. Everything above that had to come back to the council, or excuse me, to the board, to approve any kind of disposal of property. We're trying to update that policy so that it allows, puts a procedure in place for the town staff to follow when they want to dispose of property that is no longer of use of the town. And then sets a dollar limit for when it needs to come back to you for approval. So anything below $25,000, the town manager has the direction to dispose of that as the staff and he sees fit. Anything above that would come back to the council for approval. Any property of any type or real estate interest would come to you no matter what the value was. Obviously, grant funding would follow the grant procedures, and then as well with anything brought through the police would be handled accordingly to that. So really, this is just trying to get rid of the old resolution so that we can put I would say, a more defined process in place for the town to follow to get rid of property that's, needs to be disposed of.
When you say 25,000, are we talking purchase price or
Actually,
price
we-
at disposal?
Price at disposal, yes.
Can I ask a question? Who came up with the $25,000 amount?
It was basically, one, it's a GFOA best practice to set an amount for this, so at that point, you could look at what type of vehicles or what kind of equipment that you have. So you might have a 15-year-old loader that's probably worth, upwards of $20,000 and $22,000 that really should be traded in when you buy your new loader, whatever the case may be. So that allowed police cars to be traded in, that type of thing. The 25,000 was set, that felt comfortable with where we were with our equipment, and any type of major expenditures above that, then you guys would take a look at that.
So it's going from 1,000 to 25,000?
That's correct.
It just seems like an extraordinary jump.
That's 1,000 original purchase price for what we assumed for 25,000 original. Why not something in the middle? I'm just curious as far as the methodology behind
Again,
it.
just looking at the type of equipment that we would be getting rid of, it made sense to be at that level, really. Obviously, yes, you can lower that, we can lower that amount if that's at the request of the board. But again, it was, if you want us to come back to you every time we trade in a police car or we trade in a loader or whatever, when we're buying a new one that you have approved, then that's why that limit was set.
So
And we had the loader before the first resolution.
So what is the protocol procedure that's in place to validate and support that XYZ needs replacement? That's my concern.
That's a good question.
And is it a team? Is it a group? Is it one individual?
And I
So-
think that
so-
was the intent when the initial was set.
Yeah, just, this is one individual trustee, but yeah, that number doesn't, I think that's way too high. Unless there's
15?
protocol in place.
Well, the original resolution was from 2002. I
Exactly.
mean, we need to really increase this.
Oh, no,
definitely.
I'm not arguing that. I'm not
No,
arguing
I think
that.
the intent with 2002 was a purchase price of $1,000 with the 2002 finances of the town was a significant item. But I think, like Mr. Bornstein says, it's how do we verify in the process in which we're replacing items and
I'm
things
just
like that.
asking for, I'm not arguing with that dollar amount, as long as there's protocol procedure that can be articulated here tonight and not,
Or you can even-
so it's not the number, but is one person doing it? Is there a team doing it? Is it going through the TM? I don't wanna micromanage this stuff, but I also don't wanna empower one person to have that authorization.
Chief, did you have a comment to add?
I suppose, I did the original study on this and came up with 25,000 because that seemed to be the amount that many towns were using. And so that's how I wrote the policy. It is a team approach. If I have something that I need to dispose of, I have to have a reason. I have to take it to the town manager who says, I agree, we no longer, it could be, we just don't need it anymore. Or it could be, I have a whole storage unit filled with junk that I can't get rid of because the original price was $1,000, and I'm making the figure up, $1,001 original price, and we have now a contract with an auctioneer that's going to come in and evaluate this stuff. And if he says it's over a certain amount, well, anything, any value, I take it to the town manager for approval. He's gonna question me on, why am I getting rid of something that's very good? I don't need it anymore, or it's a piece of junk.
So is the town manager approving any and all this from any department?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So-
What's your opinion on this? Just
So,
from-
just like the chief said, if you look at most towns our size and above, they have a set limit. And most of those limits that we researched were $25,000. Y'all have had discussions about what kind of powers you're gonna give me and what kind of trust you're gonna have in me. And so that's, when we had this discussion, this came up, the chief, Tom, Bill, me, and several other staff members worked on this ordinance. And so we brought this to you, and we feel like this is a good procedure to go forward with. I feel comfortable with it. I've had this power in the past in several cities that I've worked at. We've got a really good auctioneer that's local. I sent y'all an email today about that. that we feel comfortable with, that he's gonna be able to tell us that we can get rid of some of this junk that we have. We pay $150 a month per storage unit. I think we have 3 right now, and they're just full of trash. I mean, stuff that we can't get rid of because the original purchase price was $1,000 or more. And so we can't get rid of it right now unless we change the ordinance.
Well, I
Now,
think-
whether or not we're gonna do 25 or we're gonna do 15, that's your decision. It's how much you trust staff.
But let's back up to what I said, 'cause we're talking 2 separate topics. I'm not arguing the 25K. That's, but.
I was.
Okay, in all fairness, if you all took the time to research,
Mhm.
I don't see anything. I'm not here to micromanage, but the procedure, again, well, we just talk. I mean, there's gotta be some protocol, because if you want 25, you want 50, do it. But I got a chance to see the auctioneer. We're talking 2 different things, because we're talking $25,000. Things you're auctioning are $4, $10,
Right.
$1,000.
That's all old stuff.
So we're talking
Right.
2 separate topics here, guys. I think you
Well, we're-
owe it to the board at least to go, hey, this is the protocol that we're gonna follow. If the chief or Tom, they have something, here's the value of it, this is the justification why we need it, this is the cost to replace, this is what we get, goes to the TM. Doesn't go to us, but I don't think you're bringing that to the board. And it's not fair to be talking about $1,000 items because you're asking for $25,000. 2 separate topics.
Is that what's
is
spelled
there-
out in the board packet? Is that the updated process in which you
Yes.
want, that's
Yeah,
the
That's the
updated one
draft policy
provided?
for us to implement, yes.
Can we get red lines next time on that
Definitely.
packet item,
Yep,
or similar packet items?
right.
It would seem to me, obviously, that I think everybody on the board agrees that a $1,000 item that's sitting in junk that's probably worth $4 right now, but costs $1,000 is absolutely ridiculous. There's no doubt about that. The point then is a $25,000 jump. So if we said 15, just for example, not because that's a good number or a bad number, then what we would seem to be doing is excluding vehicles. And that's the problem. So do we want to allow for older vehicles to be included in this, that we don't have to see that or not? That's kind of what this 25,000 number is going to come to. That 15 wouldn't cover that.
Could we do a
So-
15 with an exemption of vehicles?
Well, that would be a great
Excluding
idea.
vehicles.
That's a good
Well,
idea.
Just make it, we're making this more difficult than it needs to be. We do this and it's crazy. All you gotta do is, and whatever your protocol procedure is, of 1 sheet, it's valued at this, it's worth this, it's gonna break, gonna cost this, we need this trade in.
And the town manager's gotta see it
And you
to
submit that
prove
to
it.
him, we're done. But all I'm saying is, y'all came and asked for that dollar amount, and nobody's challenging that.
No.
But let's not start doing A but not B, C. I can see the mayor pro tem's agreeing. It's like, we do this, we make it too difficult. So just come with a procedure protocol, and you're good.
Well, and again, what was included in the packet was the policy and procedure for this process. There was nothing before. All you had was a resolution said anything over $1,000 had to come to you for approval. So the process is in that new document now, so we can change anything that you would like to change.
Yeah, I'm
That's
just,
what this is trying to put in.
I'm just suggesting, and we talked about this for years, because we come in budget and a cost analysis. If we pay $100,000, but it costs us 200 on subcontracting it's the same thing with this. It's just bought it for this, it's valued at this, gonna break at this, replace, buy new, and it's to our advantage.
My apologies, I didn't realize this was a first one. I was thinking that there was one with the resolution
Right.
before. Okay.
With that clarified, my question is, passing the resolution that gets rid of the old resolution, is there something that immediately puts in effect the new protocol? What I don't want is to pass something null and void the old resolution and have a gap between when we get rid of the old and maybe a month from now we'll pass the new. What I want it to be seamless, so when one is ineffective, the other one becomes effective.
I think the resolution handles that.
And I wasn't sure because it didn't, like you said, didn't specify that that was the new revised process.
So in this resolution, both of those are covered.
Right, exactly. It eliminates the first resolution and creates a
And
new
immediately
resolution.
makes the new one active.
It's not
And you're approving everything that comes from any department.
implemented as a policy.
Yeah, it's formatted as a policy,
Okay.
not a
And
resolution.
you have to approve anything coming from a department.
Right, exactly.
But I'm not beating a dead horse, but to make his life easy, because he's got 5,000 things to do, and he's doing them well, that it's the responsibility of the directors to give him the necessary information to make a decision. And the way it's written right now, and I'm gonna beat you up, Jake, the chief can come in and go, I need this, because there's nothing. So I think we have an obligation to our town manager, and no, wait, hold on, chief. I think we have an obligation to the DM to make his life a little bit easier, so this policy goes quick. Nobody's challenging the empowerment we gave the town manager. And nobody's challenging if these guys need to replace stuff, but give the information. And I'm sure they already have it, it's just a simple one-page document.
I'm not following you.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying, I'm just saying with like a car or something, just have some validated information rather than just coming in casual, because if there's an audit or if the board wants to know, hey, why this was replaced, the documentation's there. Because we're jumping to a big dollar amount. This is no
Right.
different than when we went through with the checks and we saw what happened there.
Let me make sure I understand what you're saying,
This is, okay.
trustee, is that I think what we do today, I mean, what we've done on property right now is they do that. Exactly what you're asking, is they don't just come to me and say, hey, we're gonna get rid of this car. They come to me and they make a report, they say, tell me how much the car's worth, and then when we take it to our auctioneer, he puts a value on that, and then we put it online, and it's auctioned off. And so it's really the point to where we're making the decision as a team on when does this piece of equipment need to be let go from the town? When do we need to update that piece of equipment, especially on vehicles? We have a policy right now to where we keep vehicles for 7, 8, 9 years that are probably 3 to 4 years past the good life of that vehicle. We're spending more money repairing that vehicle than we are if we would replace it and take out another note on a brand new vehicle. And so we're doing a study on that right now. Bill's involved in that, the chief's involved in that, Tom's involved in
But
that,
I'm
I'm
not
involved in
talking
that.
studies. I'm not, I mean, if I asked you right now, can the board please see the documentation on the submittal from the chief on police cars and the replacement? I don't know if that could be
We
materialized.
just bought 3 cars.
That's not what I said, that's not what I said.
I'm sorry.
That's,
What do you
I'm
get
just
rid of?
saying if the chief coming is going, these gotta be replaced, there's a reason why, blah, document,
Right.
yep, signed, done. I'm just saying there's gotta be some type of simplistic paper trail, just not this informal, because you've got tons of stuff going on, and if the
Right.
board has a question right now, it's, oh, well, the chief said X, Y, Z, or, I don't think this is a big deal. I'm
Right.
just trying to formalize it a little bit better, because we're asking to jump this dollar amount substantially, and I'm not challenging that.
Right.
Do we get appraisal, some sort of documented appraisal on outgoing vehicles?
We are now. I don't think we did before. We are now. Yeah,
Okay.
that's what we're gonna be doing. Everything that we get rid of today will have a value assigned to it by our auctioneer.
Any further questions or comments or motion for this resolution? Now, this resolution is repealing the resolution from 2002 with a policy in place,
Oh, with the one outlined.
with the one outline.
Right.
I'll make the resolution. I don't know if I'm communicating correctly what I'm looking to see.
Right.
But we'll save that for another day. Resolution number 19-2019, the resolution repealing resolution number 31-2002.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Ms. Hogan?
Trustee Koopman,
No, not with that dollar amount.
trustee Bornstein,
I'm gonna abstain right now.
trustee Romanella,
Yes.
trustee Clark,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott,
Yes.
Mayor Wilson.
Yes. The motion fails 4-1-1.
Can we give the direction to you guys, maybe just rewrite that at a different, maybe at
Yes.
15,000, and maybe a one-page, hey, there was something documented about what's wrong with this and why we're replacing it, and just have that on file in some way?
And you could put the exception of the
Vehicle.
vehicles in there.
But can I just come back and go,
This-
just leave the number alone? Just leave the 25 alone.
Yeah.
Leave it alone.
Have a
But,
one-
but just have some simple protocol bullets that go to the TM, so he can go look and it goes, makes sense, done. This is not for us, this is for him. Don't change the number, leave the number alone.
I'd be curious what item
The number's too high for
is
me.
in that gap. I mean, that, other than a vehicle, I wanna know what's 15, 20K. I mean, that's.
Right, yeah.
But I don't want you to go spend hours trying to research what it
What
was.
is, right?
I mean,
But we've empowered him. I trust him with 25K or 50K, I really do. I'm just saying that these folks do their homework to give him the correct information so he can make the decision.
You have something that's gonna help us out,
Mr.
Tom?
Thornish?
No, I just wanted a clarification on the vote, because I counted 3 yeses, 2 noes, and 1 abstention. So yes means it passes.
no, it failed 3-2-1, or 3-2-1, which is
3 yeses, right?
3 yeses,
Yes.
2 noes, and 1
Yes,
abstention is the same as a 3-3
3-3
tie,
vote.
essentially.
Oh, the extension.
But, Mr. Mayor, let me ask you a question, please, because I don't know if we can revote this. I think you all understand what I'm saying, maybe.
I'd like to see it come back.
I think
I'm with Mr.
Like next
Romanello.
meeting.
Yeah,
Like next meeting, and let's get this done.
bring it back, bring it back.
And let's just do it at 15, either 15 and exclude
I think
vehicles.
what
or-
you're looking for is record of what's going out and how we came to that price.
And not for us. It's for them to give to him so he can make a decision.
Well, then it's on file, though.
Right.
Okay.
But, and if we can do that, but don't, I'm saying here, do not change that number.
I
I
don't
mean,
see any reason to.
No,
I
I mean,
have
I
a
mean,
feeling this will come
I
back
would-
the same
I
way
would
and
vote
it'll
that. I would
pass.
vote that right now.
Okay.
If we need to make a motion to do that, is the number. I will, because I don't think the number needs to change.
And I just say, if you bring it back with 25, I'd love some examples of what's in that 15 to 20 that's not a vehicle.
Right.
So next meeting is good.
Well, I don't think that was the issue, though. I was thinking,
Well, that's my issue, is
comment
I want
was-
some more information on it.
The comment was that that's almost always gonna be a vehicle.
Well, that was my
We
assumption.
can't-
It
we
was an
can't play
assumed
with what
comment.
if-
It was
what
an
if
assumed
someday
comment.
There's something that's.
No, it is,
$5,000
and that's what I'm
that's not.
curious, is there something in that window that we're not thinking of that has come up in the past? That's just what I wanna know, and it'd be hard pressed to
You think
figure
of
out what it
anything,
is.
Bill, that would be,
I can only go back to prior experience that we
Right.
would trade in,
Technology of some sort.
no. it
Tom,
actually just
anything
be
that comes to your mind?
A grader,
Backhoe,
a grader would be worth
mowers,
50 or
street sweeper, grader.
$25,000.
So that's equipment, though. That's vehicle, basically.
Yeah.
That's-
Nothing
it's
other than
fi-
a tool or a vehicle.
Yeah.
the street paver,
Again,
it's not actually a vehicle.
Yeah, well, no, not a, yeah, but,
tool.
yeah.
But
All right.
again, yeah, Tom's gonna give that information, and
besides equipment and vehicles, I can't think of much that's gonna be between 15 and 25.
No, probably not. So
Yeah.
then, so would we all be good then with just the documentation then? Leave the 25 alone? I would be with the document.
that's
Leave
what
the
I
25 alone.
propose.
But the documentation is there now.
No, it's not.
not in
It's
a
not.
way that's
It's not.
Are you saying it's not in the policy? Or it's not how we operate today? Because
I'm not-
that's how we operate today.
I think he's,
Well, okay, today, but I'd like to see that in the policy.
Okay.
That's all I'm saying.
We can do
In
that.
the
Within
resolution.
policy, I'm 300% good.
It just seems to me that it's kind of outlined in the policy, however, maybe we have a form that will document this that you
Yeah.
wanna see,
So you want the form to be in the policy?
something that's filed
Okay.
and
Okay.
kept.
so that
We
you
can
have
do
that
that. We can do
Trail.
that.
Yeah.
audit trail.
So
do we need
would
to
you,
see the form or
would
could
you,
we pa-
I was gonna
pass
say,
it with the form
I was gonna
in
say,
place?
would you agree to vote on it tonight if we agree to
Add
get you a form?
Yes, I would.
I'll be, well, my vote's gonna change. I will vote on it
I
under
would.
that premise. I'll be more than happy to.
Can I make a
So
motion?
now we're voting on an unknown form and
You have to have a motion to
I don't wanna do
reconsider
that.
and then begin discussion.
Can I make a motion? I'd like to make a motion to reconsider, I'm sorry, Resolution 19-2019, a resolution repealing Resolution number 31-2002, with adding a form trailing the, how do I word this? The value and reasoning as to why we're displacing equipment and buying new.
Wait, second.
Ms. Hogan, did you
Yeah, I didn't get that.
get that? Well,
I will when I listen to the audio again.
I'm Italian, I speak fast and I forget.
Mr. Rivera, do we need to just ask for a motion of
Yeah, I was gonna
reconsideration?
suggest that. I think would
Thank
motion to
you.
reconsider to reopen debate and then a motion to have
So-
a second vote.
Mr.
I did it all at once.
Trustee Romello,
I can't
If you
do it
would
all
like to
together.
make a motion to reconsider,
I make a motion to reconsider resolution number 19-2019, a resolution repealing resolution number 31-2002.
Second.
we have a motion and a second.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott?
Yes.
Trustee Romanella?
Yes.
Mayor Wilson?
Yes.
Trustee Koopman?
Yes.
Trustee Bornstein?
Yes.
Trustee Clark?
No.
The motion passes 5-1. We do have a motion, we now can reconsider.
So I can make a new motion now, am I correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Modifying.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion for resolution number 19, a resolution repealing resolution number 31-2002 with the addition of adding a formalized form checklist to the protocol procedure in place at this time under this resolution.
Documenting the value of property being disposed, what we're buying, and the reasoning why?
Yeah,
Yes.
just,
Okay.
yeah.
I have a motion.
You're supposed to repeat it.
No way.
Wait,
Do I have a,
Play the-
you have to
do we have a
second
second?
that. Someone second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Hogan?
Mayor Wilson?
Yes.
Trustee Bornstein?
Yes.
Trustee Clark?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott?
Yes.
Trustee Koopman?
No, not at that number.
Trustee Romanella?
Yes.
That motion passes 4-2.
And you have your direction on the form?
I do.
And
Thank
that-
you, sir.
That will be provided to us when it's
I will.
developed.
Yes, I will email it.
Moving on, ordinance number 21-2019, an ordinance revising the town of Monuments water rates. Mr. Tharnish.
Yes, good evening, Board of Trustees and Mayor. Ordinance in front of you tonight is a result of several discussions at the board level over the last several meetings concerning the current rates and what the proposed rate structure would look like. And also, in addition to this, we've made some minor administrative changes to the ordinance itself, getting rid of old language that is not applicable anymore, changing a few titles. You should have both a copy and the red line copy, or can show you what part of that got changed. And so pretty confident I answered the majority of your questions over the last several meetings. If you have any further questions, you could ask me that now, or I would see if there's any other comments you have on this.
I have a question. I had asked for a pro forma analysis because I believe there's a big chunk of this process missing. The pro forma analysis should usually include the cost projections of future projects in the formula, in the mathematical formula to create the increase in the water rates. But it seems to be missing. I didn't get that part. And so if this is not an emergency, I would like the opportunity to look at that part before I am asked to vote on that part, on the whole thing.
So are you referring to the document, I believe the last meeting I showed you where
No,
the
there's-
capital projects were coming up and what the cost was, how it spread out over many years?
Yeah, on a pro forma analysis, there's a formula that you put in for those to determine what those rates should be, and I just don't see it in the documentation. Have you created a pro forma analysis of this project, of this rate increase?
The analysis that I performed was not a pro forma. It was based upon where our current revenue projections are coming in. And one, I know where we need to be for operational expenditures, what kind of money we need to generate for the capital that's coming down the road, and to build that reserve fund. And if I ran the numbers on that, this has gone through a couple of revisions. If you remember the first time I brought this to you, our base rate was a little bit lower, but our volumetric rates were a lot higher. And I've since adjusted that. In the last meeting, I presented the final form where we adjusted the base rate up slightly from the previous meeting, but we lowered the volumetric rates considerably.
Is there a probability that I could get a pro forma analysis from you?
A probability. If that's a direction of the board, I can look at generating that.
I think what you're looking for, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're looking for the methodology or the formula utilized to determine what the rate will be. i.e., you know, when we determine our rates, we look for X percentage of a gross margin of the revenue to set
Exactly.
our rates based on our cost to get there. I think what you're looking for is how did you come up with the numbers? Other than this is the end number, and if I tweak this category and this category and this category, then in the end it adds up. So this is the number that we came up with. You're looking for a more standardized formula.
If I remember right, at last meeting, you went in great detail as to here's what our customers are at, this is the volumes we're using, this is how it's gonna change, this is how it's gonna affect revenues over the next few years, and you were quite detailed about that.
Well,
Yes.
I think it was more, we haven't raised the rates, so we're gonna jump them up here to where we think they should have been at.
Right.
And call it good.
Yeah, and
That's-
I
that's
need,
not
I need a
what I
pro forma
presented.
analysis.
It's 6.5 to make up for the past couple years.
Right, I
There-
did show a column that showed you if we would have passed the original 5-year plan in 2016, in this year, 2019, where the rates would have been. And what I presented to you is still significantly less than that,
Yeah.
Based on the different fee structure.
based on the different fee structures, yes.
Which with that fee structure, it comes out to about $20 per family, but that's based on volume now. So that's all gathered during the high volume months.
Did you get $20?
I got
It's-
almost 23.
Yeah, I got
It's-
almost a little higher.
It's based upon, what I ended up doing is taking an average of all of our categories over the last couple of years since the last rate structure went into effect. And looked at where where we were heading to based on usage. Usage is probably the big part, and it varies considerably whether we have a wet year or a dry year. So to be safe, I took in the middle, not the high and low. An average, figured out where the rates would be, how much revenue that would generate if everybody used an average amount. Now, that amount could go up for revenue if we have a year where people are using more water. And it could drop if we were to have a significantly wet year where people actually conserve and don't run their sprinklers when it rains and things like that.
But-
So I kind of showed you a good idea on that last go-around of where we would end up, where we think the revenues are gonna end up based upon usage.
Which is based on the average.
Yeah.
But on a pro forma analysis, you get the projected costs with inflation minus all different types of different scenarios and factors that are involved in, like, just as a simple example, a $950,000 pipe today, what do we project it's going to be 4 years from now in order to come to that rate? You see what I'm saying?
And it sounds like they don't have
Yeah,
that.
it's missing. It's missing from all the documentation. There's no pro forma analysis, no typical, which is typically what you get when you're increasing.
Can you say again that example? What are you looking for? I'm sorry, I'm not sure.
I think what is being said is we have a estimated cost of projects. The estimated cost of projects currently not accounting for the cost of projects 4 years from now.
So we're not,
Exactly.
but again, I'm gonna say, and that makes sense, but this also is not written in stone. So
Right.
these rates,
The board can change
you
it.
know, it might, I don't know how we define it, cause I know we've gone through several revisions, and, I mean, I'm gonna say, and Dawn, I think you know this, Mr. Mayor, you know this too, I mean, we don't have a choice. I mean, rates have to go up because we haven't done
And
our
that might
due
be-
diligence for years, but.
Well,
And that
this
might
is
be true,
implement-
but having a pro forma analysis determines exactly what it should be versus a
Well,
guesstimate.
Well, but let me finish, please. I'm only saying I mean, this comes up based on the increase after a year, which might give us, now that we have new management in-house, and we can take that data and correctly assess. Unfortunately, I don't think we can sit on rates till we do analysis, because we've done that, I think Tom's gonna smile, we've done this for years. So we have to get something in place, and then
It
take
took
that
us-
data and then
It took us 6 to 8
adjust
months
accordingly.
last go-around to get that rate structure passed. And that was based on $70,000, $80,000 worth of contracted work to get the details to come to a conclusion, and it passed at that time the board 4-3. And we've been stuck at that rate for 3 years,
Which is not the
but our
consumer's
costs are
fault.
rising.
It really is.
Well,
Expenditures,
We still
capital's
owe them a
rising, we
proper
have no
accounting.
reserve fund.
and in all fairness, we haven't been presented with a proposed rate increase every year annually either, which is something we did when we did pass the previous one. We committed to addressing annually, and that's something I guess the board hasn't done, and or collectively, we never lived up to the addressing annually. Because I don't recall anything else being presented to us since that original one was presented.
No.
And to your point, Trustee Bornstein, I agree, we've needed a rate increase for a while. I don't agree with the way this one's done.
Yeah, I don't either.
May I provide a little bit of comment, I guess, and questioning? I've been unfortunately unable to attend the past two. I have listened, watched, and got all the information you said. So first, I appreciate you updating all the other extra verbiage as well, especially some of the outdated items such as the mayor with the megaphone going through town announcing the water emergency. That was an interesting visual. Also, wanted to thank the revisions. I know initially the proposed rates were significantly higher than what the end result is here. So I was glad to see you taking the feedback that's come along the way. I'm going to say something very shocking maybe to some. I am in support of a water rate increase. You know, we legally have the responsibility to provide and reliably provide quality water at a rate that's both fair and equitable. That's a legal requirement that we have. I think the proposed rate increase for the 2019 here accomplishes that. Very much support that. Where my concern lies is while we have the responsibility to provide fair and equitable rates, it's not our responsibility to overreach or take more than we need. And my concern is with the outlay of the following 5 years. With the 2019 increase, along with our current revenue pulling up the budget for 2019, we have a very solvent water fund. I think the water rate increase will make it even more solvent, and we even approved a significant amount of capital projects and infrastructure updates with the current budget, as I suspect we will continue to every year. So my question is, again, the unknowns of where we're going to be in 5 years. How many additional water customers are we going to have? What is the cost of XYZ products? Are we going to visit fee revenue as possibilities when it comes to infrastructure, when it comes to securing renewable water rights? There's a lot of unknowns. So much like we had directed last time, why don't we address this annually if the intent is to provide for our expected operational expenditures, build a reserve fund, and provide financing for capital projects? If that is met financially and we're able to accommodate those, why are we approving anything with a dollar sign on it that's 6 years from now instead of addressing annually?
Without a pro forma.
One of the things I want to bring up, since you mentioned the 2019 budget, if you look in that budget in the revenue section, there's a large amount under projected tap fees, I believe.
Right.
And those numbers have been significantly reduced, both by a combination of delays on those developments when they came in. And secondly, the rates that were calculated to produce that number are going to vary each year. I know it's in the 2019, but each year our impact fees go up automatically. And I think there's 2 more years left on that 5-year plan. So when you look at that, if you had a budget in front of you, you'd see I think there's 5.7 million listed in there under impact fees. That is down
2.5 for impact for this year is what's listed on a revenue of 5.7 million. So significant amount of revenue, not counting those.
That 5.7 you can almost cut in half.
Right.
So that's not gonna come anywhere near what, even though it looks like we're gonna have a large amount of revenue coming in for 2019.
I'm not looking at that. So even remove that, we're more than solvent. then some. And then when you
Well,
throw in the
yeah.
rate hike, which I'm in support of for the 2019 column,
Right.
where's the extra money, I guess the need for the extra money when A, we're covered this year and next year with that, but why are we looking 6 years out for something that we are showing financial solvency for currently and continued financial solvency? I'm not seeing the need.
If you look forward beyond 2020 and beyond, what I projected on here was our operational expenditure rising about just under 3% a year.
Mhm.
And that's based on costs. We keep getting updates for next year, price increases, everything from chemicals to power costs to things we need to run the well. Second part of that being the reserve fund, we need to bring that up to a certain level. Capital is gonna be constantly changing. We have large projects scheduled, and the sheet I showed you at the last meeting shows what the major capitals are, and it only shows for 5 years, but those are actually gonna be 20 or 30-year notes, if you call them, when you get the financing arranged. So we have to have, the revenue has to keep pace with the expected expenditures in all three of those areas.
I
So
agree that we should.
That's why you see a 5-year plan and not a 2-year plan.
Why are we approving a 5-year plan now when we can address annually based on those needs, and the needs now and multiple years in the future are currently financially met with that initial increase? And I'm in favor of an annual review and increase. What I'm saying is, why are we setting an effect now? I mean, anything can
What's
be
5 years
reversed,
down?
but what's 5 years down the line when we're showing that we don't financially have a need, not a want, a need for it now? Again, with the concept that government's role is not to take more than we need. I'm all for getting what we need to serve our people, but, and we address that annually, we address it twice a year annually, but why are we saying we need an unknown 5 years from now when that's not the case?
What is the frequency of other entities raising their rates?
I don't have
'Cause is
exact data on that. I know that most districts around us tend to raise their rates a lot sooner than we do.
Because
I guess.
I want to say Tribe uses every year, isn't it?
Maybe
Every 2 years?
And we should be addressing this at budget time, going, okay, what's our upcoming, projects for this year? What do we need to get done? What do we want to get done? And financially, where are we at? Where are we going to be? And what's the difference? And again, we incrementally raise that, because I'm going to tell you, it comes down to fair and equitable, and I believe that the current one is. But when I'm looking 6 years out, and my water bill jumps from 55 to 95,
And without a pro
that's a
forma
concern.
analysis.
Now, it may very well be the exact amount we need then, and if that's the case, I'm all for it. But you're not showing me
Yeah.
where the need is to look at that now. In fact, you're showing the opposite with the money that we're generating, that we have more than enough to do it,
For this year,
and into the future.
part of 2020, only because we're gonna start this so late in the year.
And I'm not even counting tap fees,
Right.
which I believe we need to address tap fees. We need to address renewable water fees. We need to address a variety of different components. That's not,
Well, keep in
Well,
mind,
when I'm
there's a couple things in here that I haven't talked about before that are gonna have to be taken up by the rates. One of them is this reuse pipeline that we have coming from the
CSU.
entities getting together, from the NMCI pipeline.
Yep.
We still don't have a definite number from Colorado Springs Utilities as to what they're gonna charge for that. If they bring in a factor of 1.3 or 1.2, that cost will be added into this. Now, one of the things I did when I took that into account was that, along with what the expenditure costs on the capital are gonna be, if you spell it out, and that one table I showed, show what we predict the payments are gonna be based upon, current rates. If you take into account that and the unknown that we're gonna get from Colorado Springs Utilities, this rate structure is, the way I put it together, is to generate enough revenue to cover what would those expected costs are gonna be.
and we don't know any of that. That's not outlined here.
And there's
Uh,
no
But it-
We can always
And it's
change it.
coming, and I know it's coming, and again, that's where I want the board discussion to go. Let's talk, I know Triview did a renewable water fee. I think that's great. Woodmore's had one for years to pay for all the water they bought. We need to start looking at things like that, especially when we're talking about the solutions that we're finally seeing, like that interceptor project and the water backup. Rates and rates alone, right now, and even the current budget without the rates, what was asked for and what was budgeted is paid for and then some. I'm in favor of a rate increase tonight as outlined in section 2019 with your numbers showing that doing that now and reviewing annually, we can exceed your intent and request of expected operational expenditures, building a reserve fund, and providing financing for those projects as you discussed. And we've discussed that as well, the short-term projects coming up, the short-term financing options to make that doable as well, to get our system updated and participate in some of these projects. What I don't hear you say, I get why you want to do it. What I don't see is the need or the necessity to take more than we need now.
When you approve a 5-year plan, like I'm proposing here, it sets the rates on a schedule, okay? Now, the board has always had the opportunity to come in every year, and if they decided based on the revenue and things coming in, they could freeze those. You could ask for a reduction, you could do a lot of things.
Or we could increase them and ask for
Or
it.
we've been,
You could, but by setting a 5-year plan, it lays out the groundwork to get all these goals accomplished, and still gives us somewhat of a platform. When we, for example, when we go to get these large-scale finance projects, when you go to these lending institutions, one of the things I looked at is what's your projected revenue during the life of this loan?
Oh, so they
You're
want
gonna
to
be
see,
able
they
to
want to see
support
that.
this.
Yeah.
Well, we also understanding we have a cap on the amount of money that we can borrow, understanding that we
Right.
have tank projects coming up,
Right.
current infrastructure projects coming up, as well as these massive ones.
And that's
So-
why a pro forma analysis is so important.
we had a very in-depth analysis before the last rates, and I don't think we need to spend that much money again to get another one when we already have an idea of where it was going. And you weren't on the board then, and I understand that, but
I think
I
there
just-
were spreadsheets, weren't there, as far as different
I'm
tools that
sure we
were.
could get that information to individuals needing it.
Well, like you said too, we could always in 2021 go, hey, this is looking, we're okay. We could, or based on our projects, we could freeze where we're at or adjust it as well, right?
But we are okay, and his financials show that we're okay. So why are we asking or actually setting in place process to say we are going to take more than we need, instead of saying this is what we need, do we need more, when the financials show that it accommodates his request currently, and then some.
So the question I have here, and we've had this before, and is this reactive or proactive? And understanding the projects and understanding with CSU and new facilities and what have you, but my bigger concern is how many miles of existing line is gonna fail. It's gonna fail tonight, it's gonna fail tomorrow, whenever.
Next year.
And it's again, if we wanna talk economics and numbers, homes that were $150,000 here that are now $350,000 appreciation, well, I think everybody has to take ownership, but when those lines fail and nobody has water and we don't have the money to replace, because I think
We're already replaced them, it's in the budget.
well, but we're placing it under this timeline, but what if they all fail at once? These are concerns, this is kind of the chicken.
He's not changing his timeline on replacement, though.
It's again, we have to raise rates.
I want to raise the rates.
If we do, if we review each year, I don't see that as a flag. I mean, we still have the strategy, but maybe the boat goes in a slight direction, but I do have to agree it's fair, but I mean, we do need to generate revenue for some very mandated projects.
And
I
think
agree with
we're
what
all
you're
for
saying.
that.
And I think the revenue's there. You've shown
Yep.
that not only do we have the revenue there now, but with that extra revenue, with the 2019 increase,
Yep.
we're accomplishing everything you said was the intent of this. What I would like to propose, and I'll make a motion, but we can't because we have a public comment first, but why aren't we addressing this annually? We should have done that, and that's what we wanted to, and we said we were gonna do last time, and we didn't.
You know, one of the things, since Trustee Bornstein brought it up, is, you talk about line replacement and valve replacement. There are line items in the budget for the rest of 2019. And I can tell you so far this year, as far as valves go, woefully inadequate. We had 6 valves fail this year so far. We spent almost that entire budget. It doesn't reflect on the updated sheets only because those are about a month behind when it comes to invoices and posting.
Thank you, Tom. This is a, go ahead.
Tom, I just wanted to mention, I'm all for a rate increase. And if you need this schedule that you've mapped out in the board packet to do business with the banks, then that makes sense to me. And an annual review, along with an annual review, makes sense. But I do have a question about the timing of this, because we're now going into the hot summer months when we're using the most water. And this is now, if this is active as of, tonight, these rates increasing. Have we considered at all how that's gonna affect our fixed income residents? And I'm bringing that up because I just wonder about maybe the timing not being exactly right in the middle of the hot months where we're activating our sprinkler systems now and.
Well, actually, when an ordinance is changed, it goes to the town clerk, and there is about a week or so delay before it's published. Takes 30 days from when it's published before the ordinance becomes effective. And the way our billing cycle works, even if this passes tonight, which I'm hoping it does, when this passes tonight, the earliest that we can implement this would be in August. So the people would not see an increase in bill until September.
So the first bill with the increase would be September for the August month?
September's bill for August water.
Okay.
And if you remember the rate structure, I did some sample bills for our customers, our residential 3/4 inch, which are a big majority of our customers. And this first year in 2019, I think the increase ranged anywhere from 25 cents to, I think, a few dollars. I don't have the exact number in front of me right now.
For the month.
How did you,
For the month.
Right.
yes.
And that was based on
I'd be
previous,
interested in seeing that.
Seeing a pro
That was in the
forma
last, you said that was in the last?
Yes.
yeah, he had that in the
I'll look back.
last one.
So the pro forma analysis actually gives us all this information in a graphic format, and it should not be something that costs extra money. It should be that our directors can do that pro forma analysis.
Okay.
So I'd like to somehow get that into the mix, that we do that annually with a pro forma analysis, so we know that we're being fair to everyone.
Okay. This is a public hearing item. Would anybody from the public like to speak for or against this item? Ms. Swearinger,
Thank you. Do I need to go up there, or can I stay here?
up here, please.
Nancy Swearingen, 418 Trailhead Road. I think everybody knows that one reason I come to these meetings is because of the water situation. Yay, Mr. Koopman, for saying that you're good with a rate increase. I truly appreciate that. Anybody who's been here any length of time has to admit that this is eerily similar to what we were talking about 3 years ago. We have not gone any further. We have not progressed. We have not made any attempt to get our water situation on good, solid footing. If you don't like the rates 5 years down the way, that's no problem, because what you can do is you can go ahead and get this into motion tonight, and then if you like your annual review, go back next year, look at your finances and say, we're on good, solid footing, we don't need to do that rate increase. Or you could say, every pipe in town blew out, and we are so far behind that we can't get ourselves out of this hole, so let's go with the rate increase for 2020, 2021. But if you sit here tonight and you don't pass this thing, you might as well be sitting 3 years ago, because you're no further along. I would highly hope and recommend that the Board of Trustees would take these numbers, accept that Mr. Tharnish does a lot of investigation. He knows what he's doing with his job. and take his numbers and rely upon them and then review it again in a year. But do not hold this up because of you're thinking that maybe 5 years down the way we don't need it. If 5 years down the way we don't need it, come back and review it. But we have sat here for 3 years with no forward progress, and it is time to start moving forward and taking care of the town. Thank you.
Excuse me, can I ask her a question?
No,
No?
that's not.
You got
that's
comments
not-
coming back, it'll come
I
back
just
to.
want to ask her a question.
No.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak for or against this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board for further discussion or a motion.
Can I just ask what happened 3 years ago?
We hadn't raised water rates in 20 years, and it was very
Painful.
painful.
Well, and if you recall, there was, in one of my biggest holdups on the last one was the setting into law a set rate increase for 5 years down the line. And while it's easy to say, well, you know, if they don't like it 5 years from now, 6 years from now, they can go ahead and not do it. I don't have faith that they are gonna have the ability to do it. What I'm going is the facts that's presented to me tonight. And the numbers that you presented, and again, I like the numbers, I like your process. I'm not even debating that 6 years from now, Mr. Tharnish, that number you bring to the board and say, due to this circumstance, this circumstance, this circumstance, and this, we need exactly what I predicted, which is, all it is a prediction 5 years ago. Or maybe you ask for more, maybe we don't ask for any. What I do know is it's a heck of a lot easier to come at budget time and say, this is our scenario, this is what we got, this is what we need to do this coming year, and you have a board, a current sitting board, have the ability to review that and do that. I'm not comfortable taking the numbers that you gave me that clearly show solvency into the future with everything that you pointed out as being your goal and your intent, and saying 6 years from now, you know, whoever's living here is gonna get these rates unless whatever board's sitting at the time goes back and reviews. I am absolutely in favor of taking the 2019 rate increase and say, yes, I wanna approve this tonight as outlined with a requirement that the board annually reviews at budget time and is presented with your opinion at that time with actual numbers that are there. As Trustee Elliott said, it's contingent on financing. This has nothing to do with financing. This isn't gonna do squat for our financing prediction 6 years from now. But when you go and you say, we just did a rate increase, or we're doing a rate increase on X day of X year, that might play into it, but that's not gonna make a bit of difference for what your financing is right now, on what your projected or hypothetical numbers are 6 years from now.
Well, Mr. Tharnish understands, and so does Mr. Foreman, what the banks need to see for what's projected for the future.
They told
And that-
us, they came.
And that was his point, and that was my point. I also value the work and the amount of time and the detail that has gone into this presentation that Tom has done, that Mr. Foreman's been involved with, and I trust their expertise over any one of us on the board who are not water experts or water infrastructure experts, period.
Government does not take more than they need, period.
I do agree with that, and I do agree with the
Then
annual
show it.
review. I
Then
do
show
agree
it.
with the annual review.
Then let's show it. I support everything Tom did as well, but we do not take more than we need.
Please.
No, if you got a comment, go ahead.
No, I'm just gonna make the comment, and again, we're throwing spaghetti, and I think our public comments really said it, because the only people that have to take ownership that drop the ball on this is the board. Anybody who's been up here for the last 3 years has gotta step up, put their hand up and go, we dropped the ball. So we can't point at Tom, because Tom came with a plan.
No, I think it's dual. We've been asking for, or some of us have been asking for this for quite a while.
Well, and again, neither here nor there, but we're here tonight. We're here tonight, and we have a proposal. I don't see I don't see the difficulty in approving it and reviewing it annually, because guess what? It might have to go up. You know, we talk about it's linear as far as the growth, or it stays stagnant, or it goes down, and the information that our colleagues asking for, we can always, more information is good. But I do agree we have to take some action and get something going. Regarding the comments that were made is, when do we impose this? If we wait till summer's over, then we probably don't need to have this to begin with. So unfortunately, we follow the
But that's-
protocol.
That's what I think is frustrating about it, is the whole point is to suck as much out of the summer as possible at the expense of our ratepayers.
Well,
But it's only 1 month though,
but the
right?
good- But the
Month
good
of
news,
August.
the good news we're seeing
No?
with the weather is, and it's like Tom
It's a
said,
what?
peaks and valleys. You can trend it, but I don't think Tom has a crystal ball and we don't, so. I just think it's just trustee's position. I like what he's proposing because it's not written in stone. The board can change it, but we can say to annually review it, but if the board doesn't get involved, this will go on forever and ever and ever, so.
Mr. Rivera, do we need to make a motion to change the wording in the ordinance 21, 2019 to allow for requiring annual reviews?
Yes, if you'd like to. I didn't see that in there, and so I understood there was two kind of questions regarding revisions. One, to change the effective date, that would require a motion, and then also to add a requirement that there be an annual review that would require a motion as well.
Would we?
So you need to make the motion to add an annual review before you made a motion to pass the ordinance?
Yes.
Okay.
But would we need a motion for the effective date? Because I think Tom shared, if it's voted on tonight and passes,
It's only gonna-
it'll kick in the bill in
September bill.
September, which is.
At 25 cents to $3 a month for most people.
Which is the rate of
Three-quarter inch
August.
residential, yes.
Right,
Yeah.
but it's very minimal.
Yeah.
Well, I make a motion to add an annual review of the board to this ordinance.
And I'll second.
We have a motion and a second for adding an annual review to the motion.
Is that right, Mr. Rivera?
Or is that
Do we do the
part-
motions to make revisions, or do you have to do one big
You have to say-
motion for a revised
Oh,
ordinance?
I didn't, I'm trying to.
What I understand,
How do we do it?
Trustee Romanella to attempt to accomplish is to simply pass the ordinance with one revision, and that
That-
revision would be to add some language or add a requirement that this be reviewed annually.
That's exactly my intention. How do you want me to word it?
I second that.
Am I good?
I would just,
I make a motion to approve ordinance number 21, 2019, an ordinance revising the town of Monument's water rates with an annual review of the board of the rates.
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
Trustee Romanella?
Yes.
Trustee Bornstein?
Yes.
Mayor Wilson?
Yes.
Trustee Koopman?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott?
Yes.
Trustee Clark?
No.
That motion passes 4-2.
You take money that is not needed.
Discussion items, emergency
Absurd.
interconnect, Mr. Thornish.
Okay. Go ahead and bring it up, Laura. This is one I was gonna put at the last meeting, but we wanted to wait till Trustee Koopman's here since he asked for this.
Appreciate it. One of those many things coming up.
What you'll see in front of you here is the plan. It's real similar to what was presented about 2.5 years ago, I believe. Shortened it up a bit, and basically the interconnects.
Stand by the mic.
Give me one of those up your chest. I like to walk around a bit. So anyway, the interconnects, at that time, we had looked at 8 different entities and where potential interconnects would come together, and also where, what the cost would be. Again, these are based in 2016 dollars. Since this original presentation was presented, we've had some major changes go on, along with involving all of our neighboring entities, and that is to bring a potable water line from Colorado Springs Utilities through a pipeline about 6 to 7 miles, connecting to us somewhere on Old Denver Road. Once that pipeline is in effect, is flowing, that is a physical interconnection between Woodmore Water and Sand, Triview, the town, and potentially Denala. They haven't totally bought in yet. It's supposed to bring our potable water back to us, already treated by Colorado Springs Utilities. In essence, it stands in as an interconnect between at least 3 entities, possibly 4. And one of the great things about that is that cost is gonna be shared among the 4 entities. So our cost to basically provide this interconnect and what our original costs were gonna be is significantly reduced. Again, I just wanna go through some of these rather quickly and then take some questions. If you remember, if you were on the board back then, I can't remember who was all here, but these were all the entities we looked at as possible interconnects. And again, all of these were looked at. Some are gonna be pretty expensive to put in, others are not even gonna be considered due to their ability to produce enough water that we would need in an emergency. All right, first one, Woodmore. This seems to be the most likely candidate, even though Triview is kind of a partner since they're within the town boundary. Woodmore's water district has capacity to service in an emergency. And potential connection, if you look at the map there, I know it's kind of hard to see because it's a distance away, is has it crossing under the interstate. The bad thing about the downside to this connection is that Woodmore has a higher pressure zone, so they would have the ability to feed us, but we wouldn't have the ability to feed the water back to them if they had an emergency, unless we built another booster station and elevated our water pressure. And then at the end, I'll show you what projected costs were back then. Triview at the time, we were looking at a connection, and I can't remember exactly on that map there, but you can see again, it's another under the interstate crossing. And I'll remind you what I just talked about in the beginning, that connection is already gonna happen at Triview's expense, because they want to loop, they need to loop their system, and once they do that loop to all the properties on the west side of the interstate, between Old Denver and the interstate, the connection will be there.
And I understand, it's not on this connection, but the previous picture, and I think in previous discussions, you said booster stations are about 800 grand, is that right?
That's what it's gonna take to rehab or redesign our current station.
Okay.
It could run anywhere from $800 to $1 million.
Okay.
Depending on how many pumps and kind of power. Okay, and then we had Denali in the picture at the time. Again, much longer pipeline. You're talking about somewhere down there, Northgate, wherever their connection is, their most viable connection. And again, the things in blue were the paths that we had our engineers look at about 2.5 years ago. Some of the others here. Down at Palmer Lake, this one was kind of interesting in that it pretty much stayed on the right-of-way for CDOT along Highway 105. And their closest connection is physically located on 105 near I think there's a little church group outfit just before you get into Palmer Lake proper itself. That's the end of their distribution main. So that would be a rather long line, and you'll see towards the end, the pros and cons is that connection is a problem because Palmer Lake is really not in a position to provide emergency connections to a city our size. Colorado Springs Utilities, of course, this is the big player in the region, and the original connection showed us, you can see by the pipeline there, was quite a bit down the road. I believe this was somewhere in the neighborhood of about a 5-mile pipeline. Forest Lakes, 2.5 years ago, was in a different situation than they are now. You can see projected pipeline there, and I can't see it that close from here. It looks like it came down Mitchell Avenue, and took kind of a circuitous path there to get over to Forest Lakes Drive. And you can tell by the pictures how much has changed over there. This is where you saw dirt there, and now hundreds of homes. Forest View Acres, this is more commonly known as Red Rock Ranch. area. That is a district that is, again, a single source, has a well, and they used to, well, still have a spring, a very small spring supply. This is a district that completely ran out of water, probably about 2.5 to 3 years ago. Because I remember I got the calls saying, pretty desperate, is there any way we can get water to them? And I said, unless you have a truck that can haul water, we're not connected. But this is what things would look like. Again, I don't know how long to leave these up. We'll take another look. This, I believe this document is on the S drive, or if it's not, we can definitely get it, make sure it's there for your review. These are the costs back in 2016. Woodmore is around 700,000. Take a little bit. That's a connection that was where Arby's currently is. It was going to go under the interstate there to tie into one of their zones. When I did talk to Woodmore about this, the only way that we could get water to them would be to put a second connection under the interstate up by the Wolf Business Park. In that area, because they have a much less pressure zone up that high. Triview, again, you're looking at the cost here back then, was about 1.8 million. And you can see from the other items listed down, how they fell in line as far as costs based in 2016 dollars. And again, this is just a summary that we put together. Woodmore, is it viable? Yes. Triview, is it viable? Yes. Denala, big maybe, because of the cost involved. And the right-of-way acquisition that would need to be. Colorado Springs, more info. I think that's when we started hearing about what their expansion plans were gonna be. And then after these reports are generated is when the NSCI pipeline came about, and that's when we started getting on board with everybody wanting to participate in that. Town of Palmer Lake, it doesn't make much sense from both a water supply and a cost supply to tie in. If the town was to put a tank on the current site where we're at, then tying into Palmer Lake from us to them would become way more viable, because that would put us within 500 feet of the end of their system. Forest Lakes at the time, again, very costly. Forestry acres, again, more of a water supply problem than a cost. So that's the original plan. I guess what I'm trying to get at here is Triview already has plans to bring that water line under the interstate to tie into the town's 12-inch main that's on Old Denver Road. And we will have some costs associated with that, but nowhere near the numbers that we originally thought we were gonna have to deal with.
When is that?
Time frames are almost the same. If you look at trying to do an interconnect, you not only have to design it, but you have to go through CDPHE to get approvals to connect these systems. You have to run power to that site, because you're probably gonna have some kind of a power requirements, whether it's in a vault or a upgraded panel. Both of these, we're looking at from an infrastructure standpoint in the neighborhood of about a year to a year and a half. So we're hoping we can get that viable, but a lot depends on what Colorado Springs does. If they're under a much quicker timeline than us.
So Triview ran pipe along Santa Bay Trail, and that's what sparked my initial question
Right, they ran
or
sewer
desire for this. What's that?
They ran sewer pipe.
Okay, so they're not doing water as well?
They have a water line under the interstate already, but
Right.
it's near the Valero substation, or the gas station
Right.
near Baptist Road.
And they're gonna run that along though with it, right?
They need to loop their system. They only have a single line coming up, and when the NMCI pipeline, our water comes back to us basically. That pipeline is gonna come down Higbee Road and cross through those open lots next to the YMCA and under the interstate there. So somewhere near the Pastimes neighborhood is where that connection is gonna be.
Right, so probably about the time that they start running that up, when they build and those start getting developed, is when we're gonna see the water actually there, which probably comes in alignment with what you're saying is a 1.5-year timeline anyway.
Right, that's best case. And that's what we're hoping for, because we know that Colorado Springs Utilities is under some pretty aggressive deadlines to get their sewer line intact if they want to bring it this far north, which is what everybody's planning for. And the question has always been, nobody's gonna sign off on it until they can guarantee us our return flows back. But because they're treating the water for us and giving us basically drinking water back, there's gonna be a factor associated with that.
Right.
So that's why, my recommendation is gonna be to stick with this NMCI, pipeline that's gonna bring our reuse water back to us. Cause you gotta remember that could range anywhere 35 to 40% of our current flow. We'd be getting back without having to treat it. We go right into the pipeline and, add to our capacity. Now, we're still gonna have to drill a well in the near future, but that may be the last well we have to drill for a little while. Hopefully we get enough flows and the pipeline gets put in. This pipeline is pretty large. I think we're looking at probably 24 inch, and that's somewhere in that range. And it's coming all the way from Northgate and 83, about 5 to 6 miles, somewhere in that range. So that's my recommendation is rather than pursue an interconnect with Triview or Woodmore, or two likely candidates, at a cost, we're gonna have a connection that connects all of us. So if we needed extra water, once that pipeline's in, we talk to Woodmore, Woodmore says, okay, you can take 200,000 gallons a day that we don't need right now until the situation's over. Same way with us, if we need to send water to them, there's no reason why that couldn't be, they couldn't just take our flows off that same connection that they're already physically gonna have.
And what's the recommendation cost?
We don't know that yet until Colorado Springs Utilities gives us their factor. But we're all in this together. We meet almost every month, if not every couple of weeks. All the entities up here, Jim McGrady and Jesse and Kip Peterson at Denala.
And I think all the proposed costs that we've looked at so far are less than what we were gonna spend on a reclamation system that we're gonna have to build ourselves.
That's great.
So I think
This is
it's,
a wonderful option.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah, I mean, I think our rough costs, we think are gonna run between 2 million, somewhere in that range, 2.5.
Is there any additional questions?
No, I appreciate the update.
Thank you.
And that's the Monument intersection,
Mr.
right?
Foreman, Tri-Lakes.
North Mountain Creek intersection.
real quick, some of the background on this. During the trustees meeting on May 20th, the board requested additional information regarding the operating costs the town provided under the lease agreement with the Chamber of Commerce. So based on that review of operating expenses, and we worked with the chamber to get closer to what we think the numbers are, there's somewhere in between $6,000 to $7,000 annually. So what staff is looking for is some direction from the Board of Trustees on what you want to do going forward. Currently, we pay those entire costs for the Chamber of Commerce. Staff has a couple of ideas to give you some feedback on what the direction could be. A couple of options could be that the town pays the remaining months of bills until January 1st, 2020. Those costs would be somewhere around $3,000 to $3,500. The chamber would pick up the entire operating cost beginning in January 1st, 2020. Option B could be the town continues to pay the bills in the range of $6,000 a year through December 2020. Anything above $6,000 would be the chamber's responsibility.
I think the chamber should take care of their own responsibility for the entire amount right away. And every year thereafter, that's my feeling.
What is common amongst chambers? I mean, we give very little.
Well, we're supporting their facility. Is that correct?
The current,
$20,000 a year.
Okay, I'm just double checking.
Which is on the lower end.
And did I hear Terry say that they are willing to pick up their operating expenses at a previous meeting? Do I remember that?
I'll let Terry speak to that.
Terry?
Ms. Hayes?
Terry Hayes, Tri Lakes Chamber of Commerce. Thank you, Mayor and trustees. To be totally honest, obviously, we don't really want to pay anything, and I will explain why. It's normally, it's about $500 a month, and we feel that the less we have to pay in overhead, the more we can take our staff time to turn that $500 around and have more value of that to the town on a monthly basis. However, obviously, we are very, very thankful that we are in our building, and we will very much honor what you will direct us to do. I would ask that at least it's not until the end of the year, and the reason being is we have not budgeted for this, and we already have not a project, an event that we normally do annually, which is a golf tournament that we net about $16,000 a year. We, to no fault of our own, that is gone. So I'm already behind budget, $16,000 this year. And hopefully, there might be some things in the works that we can make it up, and that's what we're working on. But it would cause a hardship for us this year to do that. I would be willing to, beginning of the year, take on a portion of it. I like Mike's idea above 6,000. Mayor, you are correct, 20 for a size of city this size is fairly low. But again, we've been very grateful for everything that we have been given. So we obviously will honor anything that you direct, but we feel that the least amount of overhead that we have to pay is just more time and our expertise that we can give back to the town, and hopefully you are gaining more than what you have given us. Not hopefully, I know that you are actually.
And then the building is substantial. I mean, the market for commercial is $17 per square foot per year in our area. So, I mean, you're talking about $170,000 a year value with the building alone.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to buy another building.
Well, I wouldn't either for that price, but I mean, for 20,000 plus 170 plus it's getting up there to more than just a $20,000
Well, I would like-
endorsement or sponsorship that we're giving.
I would like to revise my statement after hearing this, that, that it could start January 1st.
Absolutely.
Would there be an option of maybe splitting it?
That's up to the board.
That's another option.
I think the only, and obviously, we don't want to blindside anybody, like with the 20, but that's not right. to
And we
do.
appreciate what you do.
Yeah, and I agree with what you're saying. I think we have to look at, though, there's other variables. We've just initiated into a partnership with ourselves, Triview and Buxton, and their focus is 110% monument. And in respect of the chamber does go outside of monument, and those dollars could be of value because, again, we're getting benefits from our colleagues on the other side because they're paying their fair share. So I think it's, again, you want to do the right thing, you want to do a good thing, but again, it's not our money. So I think there's great value to the building. I think the utilities, and again, I was the one who initially said if they were $2,000 or whatever, just pick it up, that's minute. But when you start getting bigger, it gets a little tricky. And there's lots of businesses that could use support from the town. So I think we have to be very careful because we want to give and we want to help. There's no doubt because we're a partnership, but we got to draw a line at certain points.
Well, if it's running about 6 and you said 2 is negligible, maybe we could split it with them and do 3 and 3. That would be a.
Well, there's closer to 7. Can I
Oh.
ask a question? Is it possible that the other 2 entities that comprise Tri-Lakes would be willing to help you with that cost?
The town of Monument gets approximately 90% of our time. So although we are community-wide, northern El Paso County, our time, to be honest, is focused on Monument. We give a tiny bit to Palmer Lake. They don't have much commercial up there. It's mostly residential, and we don't work with the county at all. So Monument, even though we're,
Monument, Palmer Lake, and,
that's Woodmore, which is all residential. So we don't really work with Woodmore because we work with businesses.
What about the brewing company over there, anything over there, no?
I'm sorry, what?
The brewing company or any of that stuff over there by the library? No, nothing?
Yeah, we work with them. Mhm.
Yeah.
so $100 or $200
That's Woodmore
from
though,
them
right?
wouldn't
Is what I
be
meant, yeah.
feasible? Have we asked
From the brewing company or from
those 2 other entities, is there a
From
possibility?
Palmer Lake, no, right now, just having, I sit in their meetings,
Yeah.
just like I sit to your meetings, and that would be a struggle for them right now. The county, that is something that I have not approached with them, it is not normal for them to give money to entities as far as their economic development. They partner and they help, so we can absolutely call them if we need any assistance, but that is not what they normally do.
Mr. Mayor, with the information we have, we don't have to make a decision tonight.
No.
And by no means, this trustee would never support, okay, you're on your own starting.
No.
That's totally the wrong thing to do, but maybe we can have some time to think about this and make a good decision. And we're going into budget. And now that we know,
Can we all-
maybe there's some creative things that can be done. I don't know.
Can we all agree with what Laura said about the rest of this year, just letting it go? I mean,
Right.
do we all feel good about
That's
that?
really the only
Yeah,
direction
no,
I need.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay, all right, then the rest, but then we have 6 months to talk
Yeah.
about it, okay.
So, we're in agreement to let it go for the
This year.
We'll talk about
and
it.
discuss it.
Yeah.
Well, we need to talk about it, I guess, when we start our budget.
September.
That September,
Yeah.
October, give you enough time to plan.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
Definitely.
Good.
And maybe you
Thank-
could plan for the budget next year.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Public comments. Is there any public comments? Mr. Hamilton.
Mr. Mayor, Board, my name is Dan Hamilton, 2267 Blizzard Valley Trail. I'm also on the Monument Sanitation Department Board. I'm in the Deputy Chief of Defensive Cyber Ops for the Army National Guard and part owner in Forest Broadband. So we are Forest Broadband is your local ISP. We're located here in Monument. And there's just a few points I wanted to hit quickly about that presentation earlier. First off, I'd like to talk about Ting and Centennial. They were talking about $1 million a month. They actually turned up their first customer in April. So they haven't realized any of that money yet. I am definitely on board with the county and town looking into some options, but I just want to make sure that you guys look at your expenses carefully before doing such a thing. While you would, of course, be competing with us potentially or partnering with us, we'd definitely be open to something like that. I'd like to see it done properly and not have financial burden on the city. What was the last thing I had there? Sorry, I'm just reading my notes. So we have, at this point, we have done a lot of wireless deployment. We have done fiber. We've built networks in the mountains. We've built networks where other providers have said that you haven't been able to build networks before. So before really looking at spending a lot of the city money, I would recommend talking to other people and getting some more data about that. We have broadband from Larkspur to a large part of the county at this point, and we're providing 100 megabit to every inch of Monument right now. So there aren't grants available to Monument. We are one other thing that was mentioned there was the targeted zones with that study, talking about the fairgrounds area. There's literally fiber on the fairgrounds right now. So there's fiber everywhere, and it's not that hard to reach to. Also, one other just comment on there. When you run your speed tests, broadband is actually defined as 25 megabit per second down and 3 up. I think it was mentioned before that it is 10 by 1, but it's actually 25 by 1. That's about all I have. Thank you for your time.
Can you say that one more time about the 25?
Yeah, the FCC classifies broadband internet as 25 megabits down and 3 megabit upload, not the 10 by 1. And the entire city has more than that available from at least 3 providers right now.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Any other public comments? Ms. Chapman?
Good evening, trustees, mayor. Haley Chapin on behalf of Tri-Lakes Cares. Just wanted to send a quick reminder to let you know that this coming Wednesday is our Getting Ahead graduation class. Town of Monument is actually sponsoring this graduation as part of the funds that you go to support our organization are going to support the folks that are going through this program. So for those of you that haven't had an opportunity to come take a look and get to know that program a little bit more and see the impact that it's making right here for your local residents, I welcome you to join us on Wednesday evening, 6 o'clock, over in Big Red at the basement in the Learning Center. We have a graduating class. We have some county commissioners that will be there. We have some funders that have funded the program in the past or currently, and we have some funders that have denied us funding that will be in attendance as well, hoping to change their mind for the future. But wanted to make sure that that invitation was reminded for you guys. If you are interested in joining us, we would love to have you there. Also wanted to just thank, on behalf of the community, of the recognizing of the Monument Spirit Award that was given out this past weekend. Mr. Jim Bergeron, who is the recipient of the award, we are luckily graced to have him as one of our longstanding volunteers, and he does so much for this community in so many different capacities that we were truly honored to be able to nominate him and thrilled that he was a recipient of the award this year. So I just wanted to say thank you for recognizing your community members who really do a lot for this community to make it a better place. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comments? Ms. Hayes?
I would like to invite the board and staff to come out to our business after hours tomorrow night. The location of those not within the town limits of Monument. It is out on Highway 83 and 105. It's at Searle Ranch in his barn. But the hosts of the event are Town of Monument businesses, and that would be Texas Roadhouse will be providing the food, which is always a favorite of everybody. And then Children's Literacy Center, which sounds kind of weird that they're providing the alcohol, but they are. But they do operate out of the Monument Library and provide their services out of the Monument Library. So we would welcome you to come out and support two of those Monument businesses and come say hi, everybody. It starts at 5 o'clock. It's at Searle Ranch. So I don't know the exact address. I probably should have.
Charlie?
It's literally almost at the corner of 83 and Highway 105. It's the Longhorn Ranch out
Is
there.
he playing?
Yep, and the Longhorns are there, and you can see them, and they usually take tours out to go see them also.
Cool.
But at our website, trilakechamber.com, there's a scrolling list of our events. You can literally just go on there, and it'll give you all the details that you need. I'm sorry, I don't have that memorized. So we just welcome you to come out. Thank you.
Any other comments from the public? Okay. Board authorization items, does staff have anything?
I don't have
Okay.
anything.
Does the board have any authorization items?
I'd like a future discussion item and probably presentation as well, to discuss future tap fee rates, as well as exploring the opportunity for fee revenue in particular, to address renewable water sources. So I'd like discussion to start on that as we begin to put together a viable plan to move the water scenario forward. So I don't know necessarily when, other than I'd say end of July, August would be adequate for me to start something like that.
Is anybody else interested in that?
I'm interested in that.
I'm not. Trustees?
And more so, we can highlight comparisons of where we are versus our surrounding ones. And while we're at it, we can also talk about the water expenditures. We can look at that and see where we are personnel-wise versus other water departments. Our budget that we allocate water expenditures versus similar-sized ones or outlying ones. I think there's some very interesting discussion items there.
With the ultimate goal being,
We need to make sure we're competitive and adequately serving our residents, I would say. If we're grossly undercharging on tap fees, if our expenditures or the size of our expenditures are significantly more for systems that are smaller than us, these are things that we might want to start looking at. So again, it's educational discussion.
Okay, I've seen 2 agreements. Was there any other agreements?
It'd probably be best to actually put that closer to budget time, maybe.
Well, I'm sitting here thinking that that's a great discussion for our budget sessions and stuff like that. And so I didn't know if you wanted that presentation here and at budget, or if you just wanted that at budget.
See, the more we
session.
discussed, it evolved into wanting to know more about that. Just understanding where some of the other water departments are. But initially, I just wanted to explore the opportunities that we have with looking at how are we going to pay for getting renewable water, which is one of the things we still haven't addressed and don't address with the pipeline, so.
Okay.
Is this a manageable task without Mr. Tharnish being pulled away from his public works for an extensive period of time?
How long do you think it'd take you to do something like that, Tom?
Depends how detailed it needs to be.
Yeah.
We can start with an overview.
Okay.
I'm gonna say I know other Triview's doing something similar with renewable fee, so maybe see what kind of system they have in place and what kind of success they've had with it. That might be a good starting point.
Like I said, I have 2 people in agreement, or 2 board members in agreement. I haven't gotten anything else.
Would this be better initiated? I know when Mr. TM, you created some groups that were looking
Exactly.
at public works, we're looking at law enforcement. That might be
We
the
have a
good
budget committee.
starting point for the initiation.
Yeah, that would actually
That's
be a
fine.
good idea. That way it doesn't take staff time.
Because I think the one point that is excellent is really to assess, to make sure that we're not giving away the farm, but we're not up here either, because I don't know how we assess that. That's not ours, that's the job of our directors and town managers. So I think it would come into the budgeting time to start.
And I'm not looking for a significant amount of research. I mean, like I said, you can pull up the budgets for each water department. You can see where we are versus where other ones are. So,
So-
preliminary information.
So I'm okay with the budgeting committee getting to some of that information going to the budgeting committee whenever you have that
Okay.
planned.
We can do that.
Board in agreements?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other board authorizations?
Comments?
Board comments?
Good. I wanted to thank the member of the public talking on the water rate issue, and also I wanted to talk on presentations for a minute. Though that fiber optic thing was very informative, and we probably should get our rights back, that presentation alone took well over 45 minutes and a bulk of our meeting for something that was not a priority. When I was in Metro District and we wanted to make a presentation, we were told presentations were limited to 20 minutes. Is that still the case, yes or no?
They were informed that they had 20 minutes on the agenda.
Can we enforce that from now on with a timer? And then if the board has questions, we can ask questions all night long. It's our prerogative to ask questions. But if we can keep presentations to 20 minutes so we can move things along here, I think that would be a wonderful idea.
That's great.
I agree.
See, I didn't realize that they had been notified. I thought they were
They just went
basically-
on and on.
basically tying up two presentations.
It doesn't matter whether you have
Take it
two or
with a grain of salt in that we don't have any,
Ordinance to enforce.
yeah,
over.
I mean, we can limit our public comment to 2 minutes because we have code language that states that. I always suggest to people that presentations should be limited to 20 minutes, but it ultimately, with due respect, is the board's,
Okay.
I think whether we have
to-
2, 5, or 10 presentations, we should limit them to certain times so it's fair for everybody and that we can move this meeting along. And if we have questions from the board, we can ask questions all night long. That's our prerogative, but we should limit the presentation to a certain time limit, in my opinion.
Is that an ordinance we can put in place?
I think that there's kind of 2 ways to handle it. One would be we have kind of a longstanding bin of items to put into local rules, and the other would be, a more immediate way would be to basically, when you extend the invitation to speak, you also limit them, advise them of the time limit, and then I think Ms. Hogan's comment as well received, and that there should be some notice of it, and then the board should intervene and stop it.
Well, there needs to be a clock, though. We don't
Or a
know where we're
clock,
at.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
like the with
Well,
public
no, I
comment.
can keep,
Okay, okay.
can keep time, I
Okay.
usually do, but I felt it was 2 presentations,
Oh,
even
okay.
though they were together.
All right.
So
All right,
we
I
can
was just-
enforce it, but we don't need anything in writing. is what
No, I
you're
think-
saying.
I think-
I was just
Position
curious
of
as to
the
what the
presentation.
position of
That's
that
it.
was, that we're not, we can, yeah.
Additional board comments?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I just want to comment again on the water rate information. As Ms. Swearingen pointed out, it was kind of like deja vu for 3.5 years ago, having a conversation on a 6-year water rate hike. With that being said, it's amazing sitting up here for 3.5 years now, how in that time period information can change. And that's very important to highlight to everybody that information does change. In May of 2016, for example, board members at that time were sent a memo from staff outlining the very potential for the water levels to be non-existent in a 10 to 11 year period, and the possibility of that being real. At the time, we were looking to pass a water rate increase as well as funding for a significant cost with a water reuse program. Flash forward 3.5 years, and we're talking about annexation, and the question comes up, weren't we told that there's only a 10 or 11 year window left before the aquifers run dry? Well, I don't know who would have ever said that. No, that's not the case. So the information changes, whether we gain new information and learn that maybe we were wrong before, or maybe that information wasn't accurate to begin with, and it all depends on what we're looking for. What I'm highlighting is a very real concern for the people of this community, and a dangerous precedent that we set tonight. And what we set tonight was we took the information that we had, the data that was given to us, the finances that were given to us, and that financial data outlined that we did not have a need to pass 6-year increase to achieve the intended goals that were outlined and presented to us, the board, the decision makers. But what we did, and the precedent that we set tonight, is that we're going to go ahead and approve that. And we approved 6 years worth of increases. Yes, we can go back and revise, maybe, but we were informed with the information given to us that it wasn't needed. And we as a board, collectively, took more than we needed. That's the dangerous precedent that was set tonight. We don't raise taxes with the hopes that someone's going to come along in the future and lower those taxes again. And we put into law a rate increase with the hopes that someone's going to not enact them in the future. Something's very backwards with the process, and that's something that the people need to be aware of. A very dangerous precedent was set tonight. We took more than we needed.
Any other comments?
Well, on a positive note, I just wanted to let everybody know that maybe our water issues are not going to be as serious because we have just come out of a 20-year drought with 53,000% snowpack up in the mountains. So we should have a good chunk of water for a while. You all have a good evening.
Any other board comments?
I got 2 quickies. My first one is I want to thank the town manager and the mayor for so aggressively trying to put me in the water in the dunk tank on Saturday. And from the OCN, some other people that wanted me in the water, and I got in the water. But on a side note, it's, you know, I've always asked, always want more people here. Why aren't there more? And I talked to somebody, and I've had several people say, you know, we elect you all to be there because we have faith in you. And that's why we don't need to be there. And it's difficult to be up here, and we're never gonna all agree. We're not. But I do think that we make our votes and our decisions on the best interest of the community and the town. And we're growing, and there's a lot of things we need, and it's visionary. So I think we'll get there. I think we made good decisions tonight. And that's it.
Okay. And I will also agree with you and point out that you cannot take from the future. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
We have a motion. All in favor, say aye.
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 I know, we keep going up and down with that thermostat.
It's gotta be right around the corner.
Feel better, buddy.
I'm 200%.
Okay, good. For what? All right, have a good night.
I might shake your hand.
And actually,
It really frustrates me because I really don't like it.
I couldn't look at
And we really need to talk.
Hi, good night,
I mean,
guys.
you know, I understand the idea of having a plan.
Oh, chief.
I don't think that's the point.
Good night, guys, I appreciate it.
Good night. I don't think.
This go around?